All right, I think we're live. So welcome everyone to another Matt Maran Motoring live stream here on the Matt Maran Motoring YouTube channel. Hope you're all having a great week here, and thanks so much for stopping by. So like all the other usual live streams, we're going to go for about 2 hours or so. I'll go party answering, then who does a super chat or a super thanks. So anyone who's a member there with the green usernames, they always get that party answering. If you'd also like that, there's a link in the description there. And all right, so I also, from the suggestion we had last Wednesday here in the live, I think Chad or Jordan, one of them, suggested that I do some black cardboard there behind the sign. Hopefully you guys can maybe see it a little bit better. I didn't cut it to size perfectly. Just figured I'd test that to see if that looks any more visible here tonight than it usually does. And I'm also going to bump this up a little bit because usually I think it's a little higher there. So still tweaking my placement here. But anyway, I see we have Brian and Lancelot, Vishal, Jedi Order, Chad, and Raphael, and Mr. 705, Luke, Wheatman, and yeah, so thanks so much. And I see Chad says the sign looks good. I appreciate that. And I will cut it so it looks a little bit more precise there for the next go around. But anyway, I see Brian says his spot this week was a Chevy Chevelle. Very nice. And Lancelot says good evening. I hope everyone had a good weekend. My spots this week are a red 94 Probe GT. Nice. And a black Chrysler Sebring convertible. Very cool. And Michelle says his spot was a Rolls-Royce Spectre in black. Very nice. Those are awesome. And Jedi says, good evening, everyone. I'm very curious if the rumors are true that the Lexus NX is getting a refresh for the 2027 model year. So I'm guessing it will probably be a new generation because that's what we got for RAV4, and NX has always been based on RAV4. You know, sometimes it's been a couple of years. Like I think the last generation, I think the new NX came in 2022, I want to say. 2022 model year, and that generation RAV4 came out for 2019, so it could be 3 years after, which would put us at 2029 for NX. Could be sooner. We'll have to wait and see, but I wouldn't be super surprised, especially since it is, you know, it's more than a refresh, but it isn't completely new underneath. You know, there's a lot of carryover, so that would be a little bit easier, I think, than the last generation, which actually did have a lot of new stuff. I think for this one, it's probably not going to take 3 years to do the Lexus conversion there. So I'm guessing we'll see it sooner. 2027 might be a little soon, but it's possible. I haven't heard anything personally. I have no idea, but my guess would be it'll probably be 2028 model year. But yeah, it could be sooner. I don't know. And it's also a sweet spot still. NX is still a strong seller. And also it's, you know, still the only one in its segment that offers a regular plug-in or a regular hybrid. It's one of very few that I think actually the only non-performance one that offers a plug-in hybrid. Everyone else, it's only in their performance version. So I mean, it's kind of got a nice niche carved out for itself that it's you know, fine on space and stuff. But I don't know if it desperately needs a new generation right now. So it's also why they might not feel a huge rush. But you know, I think they probably want to figure out. You know, right now they're just really focused, like it's all hands on deck to fix the RAV4 supply problem because they're taking a beating in sales as a result of that. And so I think, you know, they don't want to slow that down by, you know, stealing components for a new NX and working on that. So my guess would be, you know, figure out RAV4 this year. Next year, probably introduce a new NX for 2028 model year. And then, you know, that's when I would expect to see it. But I could be completely off there too. And Chad says, hey, Matt Chatters, today I saw an RX-7 and a GTO, all very nice and clean. There's a shop by my house that has an Amigo outside. Every time I see it, I sing the jungle in my head. I see it, I sing the jungle in my head. I don't know if I know that song. Maybe there's a commercial joke there or something I'm missing. But that's cool you see an Amigo, though. That's awesome. And Jedi Order also says the new Skyline concept teaser looked interesting. Yeah, it did. And, you know, it's a shame that we're probably not going to get the actual Skyline, but we'll get the underpinnings here as an Infinity. And that'll be fun, too. Just, you know, I'm still just I always want cheaper stuff here. And making it an Infinity version, sure, we still get the same goodness, but we get it for an extra 10 grand on the price tag or whatever, you know, which I don't love. But beggars can't be choosers, I suppose. And until Ford decides to give up the Skyline name here in America, since they own the trademark, supposedly, I think it's just kind of Nissan's got their hands tied, unfortunately. And Chad says, amigo, it's fun for a boy and a girl. Okay, so that's, yeah, I feel like that rings a bell, but I'm not super familiar with that one. And Luke says, I can't stand it when people leave their DRLs on when it's pitch black. I know people that say, oh, I like to feel control so I don't keep my headlights on auto. Yeah, I've encountered those kinds of people as well in the past that they don't love doing that. Now, I will say that sometimes in the Bullet, it would annoy me because the auto headlights would come on at annoying times. So in that car, I sometimes did do manual control, but I always made sure they were on. But if you're not particular about that, then there's no reason to not have the auto on. And especially if you're forgetful about it, then you should have it on so you don't, keep driving around in the pitch black with nothing on. But it's really hard these days if you don't have the auto lights on because, your dashboard's always lit up, unlike the past where it used to always be, only lit up whenever you had your lights on. You have your DRLs that give some people, especially if you're talking about Subaru DRLs, it's just like another low beam, and they don't actually have nice DRLs unless you pay for the top model or whatever. So, and those, a lot of people just think their lights are on because of, everything else is lit up, and people just don't pay attention, but yeah, it is definitely a huge safety issue. And it's a shame more people don't just let the car control that. Let me see. Raphael says that his best spot was a Bullet this morning next to me at the light, pulled ahead to get on the on-ramp and then left me in the dust, and the sound was glorious. Oh, I bet it was. I missed that sound. Yep, it's a good sound. Will, thanks for stopping by. And Total Sports says, will you be doing coverage of the new Mercedes C-Class Electric tomorrow? Tomorrow's the reveal. Possibly. The i3 coverage I didn't get a ton of views, and Mercedes videos in general just never get views for me. So I probably won't. We'll have to see how things play out. But I'll also have to see how impressive it is to me, because some things I'll just talk about if I actually am excited and I want to rant about it. But if it's kind of meh, then it's not something that I sometimes need to, do a rant on, especially because there's so much coverage otherwise. And some things I'm also just I don't know the timing of that, but if there's a bunch of embargo videos that already come out, whenever that debuts, and I'm already behind, sometimes I don't bother. For example, this week, the Porsche 911 GT3 SC, super excited about that car, but one, it's kind of unrelatable, and exotic stuff doesn't do super well for me. And also, the second that was revealed, there was a bunch of really good videos from all the top-notch people that are hands-on with it. Me sitting, at my desk and giving my take on it, or just saying, wow, this is the best thing ever, when it's you can infer that. It's a 9,000 RPM redline manual convertible. It's a pretty easy car to like for most enthusiasts, I think. So me jumping up and down and saying it's the greatest thing ever, probably, not worth a video. So that's why I kind of passed on that one. But yeah, so we'll see. But I probably won't. I wasn't planning on doing one, but maybe my mind will be changed. We'll have to see. And also, Lancelot, thank you so much for the very, very generous super chat tonight. I really appreciate that. He says, GR Corolla versus the Gremlin from Wayne's World. GR Corolla. And actually, so I did pour myself a drink tonight just because I was feeling a little saucy. Decided I'd have some of this. Is the Balvenie Caribbean Cask Scotch whiskey that was gifted to me a while back. I'm still slowly working through and savoring. So I can actually do a cheers for the first GR Corolla mention of the live stream here. Probably won't be the last, but I appreciate that. And cheers also to you for one of the highest super chats we've seen in a while here, Lancelot. So thank you so much for the generosity. Cheers. And shameless plug, you can get your Matt Maran Motoring whiskey glasses there on the mattmaranmotoring.com merch site if you would like to cheers me with your own glass down the road. Let me see here. So Mr. 705 says, my Toyota dealer called me Friday with some good news. My RAV should be built in the next few weeks and should be here within 4 to 6 weeks. That's awesome. Well, I hope that it's a build that you're excited about and a color you're cool with and all that. But at least you have a timeline. That is very much a soothing thing to just have a promised timeline. Now, it still might be, heart crushing if, the 4 to 6 weeks turns into longer. Hopefully it doesn't. I don't know how accurate Toyota is with their estimates, but I know like whenever we were waiting 9 months for our Mach-E, that was that like once I finally like got movement on the timeline and it wasn't just radio silence. Once I'm like, okay, there's progress here and I have a timeline, I can kind of, condition myself to have, the correct expectations or whatever, then that kind of made it a little bit easier. So hopefully that, is a good thing on your, patience and all that with the car as well. And I hope that it comes even sooner than that, hopefully. But congrats on the good news there, and happy to hear that. Theodore says my spot was a burgundy Lobo Ford pickup. Looked pretty cool. That's cool. I'm surprised that someone did it in a different color, because if we're talking about the Lobo F-150, I've only seen them in black and like one or two blues. I think there's a few other colors available, but like it seems like everyone just does black pretty much. If you're talking about the Maverick, like that one, I don't think they even make it in a red, strangely enough. But yeah, Lobos are awesome. I love them, and glad you got to see one. I'm glad they're out there. I'm hoping to review the F-150 Lobo pretty soon. I think the one dealer that I work with is starting to get some more in, so I'm hoping to do that pretty soon. We'll see. The boy says, have you reviewed the new Prelude? I have not reviewed the new Prelude, and not to peek too far behind the curtain here, but I actually I was talking with my Honda rep here just a couple of days ago, requested the new Prelude, and they do have some tighter budgets, or so they say to me. Maybe they've been watching some of my Honda bashing. I don't know which way it is, but I'm going to hopefully be getting the new Pilot here soon. So they are sending me stuff, but they seem like that they're kind of limited with how much stuff they can send me. As even though I said I'd rather have Prelude over Pilot, because I think most of you are probably more interested in my thoughts on Prelude than Pilot, that they're going for higher volume coverage right now, and Pilot is obviously the one that brings home the bacon. So I think might be waiting a while for Prelude. I'm trying to say, look, like people really want to see this. Like even that, I mean, maybe they already know that I'm going to be bashing the price tag. I don't know, but so yes, they kind of turned me down for a Prelude loan. We'll see. Again, I hope that they can actually give it to me down the road, because it's not like they were saying never. They were just like, for now we're just doing Pilot. So we'll see. But I would like to do one, and I can also go to a Honda dealer once they quit doing markups on them and stuff, and hopefully review one. I'll review one at some point. I'm not in a huge hurry, because I think most enthusiasts are kind of over it and aren't interested in it, honestly, because of the price tag. So I don't think I'm missing out too much there. So I'm not losing sleep over it, but I'd like to try it out. I don't think even if the thing, turned into a hovercraft, I don't think I would say it's worth the 42 grand. But, I think it would be, I'm more interested in reviewing it for when it's a cheaper used car, which is maybe why I should just wait till there's some on the used market, because I could see it potentially, making sense. A lot of these cars that have inflated price tags new, for example, I did a little while back the Infiniti Q70 used. Now, new, that car would have made no sense. New, I would have said this is a bad value, because it was pretty expensive. It was, right up there with, Lexus GX and all these others at the time that were just better. But now in the used market, it's cheaper, way cheaper than like a Lexus GS, for example, and others. And now it makes sense. And I think Prelude eventually will get cheap, because there's not going to be that many people that are buying them. So maybe it'll stay rare and that'll keep the price up, but I don't know if the desirability is going to be there. Maybe at the right price, but I think anyone would just rather have a Civic hatch, hybrid, aside from a few people that, would rather have a useless backseat and a two-door, but it's a really narrow niche. And so I think they'll get cheap eventually. And when they do, that's when it's like, okay, if this is, eventually $1,000 premium on the used market over a Civic hatch, yeah, like that could make some sense. And I could actually be into it then, because I think the rest of the car is, promising. It's just, the price is just, it doesn't make any sense right now on the new market. So anyway, that's my latest update on that. But also, I want to thank Raphael so much for a super chat here. He says, seeing one made me wonder, is a Bullet or a Mach 1 a good used car, or did the owner likely beat them to death? It's a good question. I think, it comes down obviously to the owner. And that's one of the areas where, buying one on the used market that is a private owner, seller, I think can give you a little bit better peace of mind. Even, I mean, people could always be lying to you, but like, not to stereotype, but there's certain Mustang owners that are, the type that you would, probably, okay, well, they drove that car hard, versus others you meet that is like, okay, well, this guy, it was a garage queen, they took it to go get ice cream every once in a while or something. And there's some of those older buyers, especially and especially when you're talking about the limited edition stuff, the Bullets, the Mach 1s, especially Bullet, I would say, because that car is aimed directly at boomers. Obviously, I loved it and many others did. It's not just a boomer car, but it's a playing off 60s nostalgia. I think your chances of getting, a Bullet that's, not beaten up is a better chance, honestly, than a regular Mustang GT that is, again, more entry level, more accessible. And Mach 1, I think, is closer to Bullet as far as buyer profile than regular GT. But I think that Mach 1 is a little bit, more open to others too. But again, it doesn't mean that every younger person's beating them to death. I mean, there's some that obviously are still very cautious and careful and, gentle with them and stuff. But I think, not to be terrible, but like, the better chance of finding one that's nicely kept is buying it off an old guy. So if you can do that, or if you buy from a dealer who's like, oh yeah, this came from one of our regular customers, they never drove it. And I mean, honestly, even this is recent in my head, because this actually just happened with the Miata. That Miata, the used Miata that I reviewed, had like 270 miles on it. 270 miles on a 1-year-old Miata. I'm like, what's the deal with this car? And I asked the salesman there at the dealership, and he's like, this is the second time that's an old couple has done this. They fall in love with the idea, they buy it, they take it home, they take it out for ice cream a couple of times or a couple little, relaxed cruises, and then they're like, this hurts to get in and out of. I'm 80 something or whatever. I don't want to deal with this, and I just never drive it, and it sits most of the year, and then they trade it in with 300 miles on it and take a bath on the trade-in. That stuff happens. It actually does happen. So I think like that Miata, that's a prime example. I mean, until I came around and, and beat on it, like that was a car that probably never even saw redline. So there are some of those out there. And again, there's also some people that are very chill drivers that are also younger and, aren't driving around like crazy. And so I think, but especially with the Mustangs and the special edition Mustangs, that's really the best way to avoid a beaten up one if you're worried about that. But I mean, also they're very robust cars. So even if you have one that's been, worked out well, they usually can handle it fine. If you're worried, I'd make sure there's no signs of like heavy track driving or anything like that. If the brakes are really beaten to hell and stuff like that, that's when you kind of got to worry a little bit. But like, those cars are pretty tough. So, the motor is pretty bulletproof at this point. Everything else, especially if you're going, actually, it's one of the perks of the Mach 1. You get the Tremec, which is more durable than the MT82 and the Bullet. So on the manual side, their Mach 1 is, going to be the one I'd worry less about, honestly, as far as abuse goes, because it can handle the abuse, even if it is abuse. Obviously, you don't want that. But the only way to ever be totally sure is to buy on the new market. And unfortunately, that's not an option with those two. But, the money would be just go buy a dark horse that give you the same thing as Mach 1, if you really want to have that peace of mind with, a car like that. And Dylan, thank you so much for the super chat. He says, what is your most favorite subcompact SUV on the market right now? I'm leaning towards the Taos now that it no longer has a DCT. Taos is good. I did the redone Taos, and they fixed most of the stuff about it that I didn't like, primarily the on-off switch that was the gas pedal, which was just horrible throttle tuning in that car. And they did improve it. So Taos is very good. So if, again, taking just, since you asked my favorite with my biases, my preferences, all that stuff, as far as a subcompact crossover goes, um, it's actually been a long time. I'm hoping to revisit it again this year, but I think my favorite is still probably Mazda CX-30, which is one of the smallest ones, one of the more useless back seats, smaller hatch. So obviously a far cry from Taos as far as usability goes. But if I were told to daily drive a subcompact crossover, CX-30 Turbo would probably be the choice that I would make, because it's so plush on the inside, has a fantastic Bose stereo, one of the fastest ones in the segment, looks great. It looks like a mini Ferrari Pro Songway almost, especially if you get it in red. That would be my favorite, but I understand that for a lot of people that one's just a non-starter because it's so small. So I'll give you my second runner-up if you can't go for one of those. And I'm guessing you're talking new, because then if we're talking used, there's other things that I pull in, like Alfa Romeo Stelvio that can be had for subcompact crossover money now, and some of these others. But I mean, I'd say my second favorite one, it's tough. I really like how good a fuel economy you can get in the Corolla Cross Hybrid. So that's one of the top ones. But Taos is up there for sure. What was the other one? There was one I was just in not that long ago. That I'm blanking on it, but I feel like it wasn't that long ago, and I was like, this is still like such a great little subcompact. What was it? I mean, Corolla Cross is really great. If you don't mind slow, HRV is good too. I'm gonna pull it up on I'm gonna just run through my my reviews here to see if I can refresh my memory quickly, so I can give you a better recommendation here. But yeah, I mean, I love Jetta. I mean, it also comes down to like how much ground clearance do you need? Because otherwise, I just tell you to get a GTI. I love GTIs. It was in one of those recently. And I mean, also like I loved like the CHR, the new, if you're open to an EV subcompact, that one's great. I'm trying to think, but I guess, yeah, I guess because there's nothing else that I was in recently. Yeah, I guess there wasn't anything else. I was trying to think of something else, but that's probably, I mean, I think there's also, some impressive stuff Kicks. It's been a while actually, but I actually love the Nissan Kicks. So and it's actually one of the cheapest too. It's slow. So that's kind of the other extreme. So if you want max power and all that, and the enthusiast one, I'd say, go for CX-30 or GTI if you don't need ground clearance. Otherwise though, Taos is good, but if you don't care about power, I mean, Taos is nice because it has the turbo, so it will feel faster around town. If you don't care about that, you just want, a nice boxy, very usable thing, Kicks is a lot plusher. It has the fantastic Bose stereo with the headrest speakers. Really just so nice to drive, has those zero gravity seats, tons of space now. I think, yeah, that would be my top pick. I think actually is Kicks. I love the Kicks, and also at a Nissan dealer. I mean, Volkswagen's the same way. They're hungry. They want to make a deal. They're going to be more pliable, more open versus Honda. They think everything they have there is gold and stuff. Stereotypically speaking, but like a lot of times that's kind of the way they are. And Toyota dealers are really tough, because they know they got hot demand on everything. And so they're not, going to bend over backwards for you like a Nissan or a Volkswagen dealer would. So now I will also say the final thing, the Taos is great. And I don't think you have to worry too much about long-term reliability, but it does have a shorter warranty. It's a 4-year, 50,000-mile powertrain. Now that extends your bumper to bumper by a year, over the others, but Nissan gives you an extra year of powertrain there. And the Nissan stuff too, it's naturally aspirated. It's a little less complicated. If you're going to keep it a long time, I would probably go for Kicks for that reason as well. So yeah, but Taos is great too. I mean, you can go watch my Taos review, the newer one, if you haven't already. I did very much enjoy it, and it is still, I think, one of the better ones, especially probably real transaction prices when you factor in discounts and stuff. Taos is a good buy. So I don't think you're making a mistake there going for Taos, but there's that's my other thoughts on the others since you asked. And thank you so much for the super chat as well. And let me know if you have any follow-up questions to go along with that too here. Let me see. So Chad, also thank you so much for gifting a membership there. I really appreciate it. And happy to see that Dylan, who was in here, actually got the membership. That's awesome. Finally, YouTube actually gifting a membership to someone who's in the live stream. It's always nice whenever they do that, but it's pretty rare. So thank you so much for the generosity, Chad. Let me see here. Where were we? Corvette says, I found my dream Corvette, a red 2001 C5 convertible. I saw it at the Corvette show yesterday. Nice. The C5s are really good value these days. And Chad says, do you know if semi drivers get instructions to drive in the left lane? I'm always respectful to them. There's a construction zone. They aggressively try to get over, and I almost got creamed a few times. It depends on the construction zone, but there are, at least around here in Pennsylvania, there are construction zones where they tell 18-wheelers to get into the left lane. Oftentimes it's because there's low overpasses, and they literally will clip their trailer if they're in the right lane, because some of them, at least around here, have like a grade to it, and so they need to have the most clearance possible being in the middle lane there. So that could maybe explain why, especially if they're in a hurry to get over. It's because they'll literally, shut down the highway if they don't. But yeah, I think every construction zone is different, but the way they are set up is that they want to have the 18-wheelers further in the middle. That also, I think, is a safety thing for the construction workers in particular. If you're going to have someone go off the rails, especially if it's on the right-hand side of the road where you have the workers, getting the bigger, more dangerous from a mass standpoint, dangerous vehicles, away from those workers a little bit more, I think is also maybe part of the thinking too. I'm not sure. But yeah, that's just one of the sometimes laws in construction zones. Not always, but that might be part of why you're seeing that. B. Mitchell says, I completed another trip around the sun today. Well, happy birthday. He says, so it was a good excuse for a day trip with the Blue Pony. Passed a nice stock Scion TC on the trip. Oh, that's fun. Yeah, it's fun to see those. Actually, one of those just got traded in at one of the dealers I work with, and I'm going to see, sometimes that stuff doesn't stick around very long, so they just ship it off to auction oftentimes, but I've always wanted to do a first gen TC, and even I wouldn't mind revisiting the second gen, but I may do a TC review. The used stuff, again, it's really a gamble. It often doesn't pay off, but I've always wanted to do a review on a first gen, so I may actually still just do that and let the chips fall where they may. But anyway, I hope you had a great birthday, and thanks so much for spending a little bit of it here with us. And I hope you had a great drive. I hope it was good weather for you at the Blue Pony there, and hope the Lobo search is still going well for you if you're still on the hunt there, B. Mitchell. And that's what, when you said it was your birthday, I was expecting the second half of your sentence was going to be, I bought the Lobo as a birthday present, but I guess the dealers are not working with you yet. So hopefully that falls in line for you if you still want that. But Kevin, thanks for stopping by too. Underdog says, good evening, Matt. Gonna go for an evening drive in my Miata while I listen to the stream. Well, that's awesome, and hope you enjoy the drive though, and listen to that glorious engine instead of my yapping, because that's definitely the better sound of the two. So have a great, that sounds like a fantastic evening. Well spent, and congrats on having the Miata there. It's a great little toy to have, I'm sure. And Luke says, almost anything that's auto. I love using auto climate control, auto headlights. Yeah, all that stuff's great for sure. I agree. And Daniel says, I saw a Corolla IM pass a Corolla Cross, and I thought, wow, same vehicle, different time, just lifted a few inches. Also saw an HS, not collectible, but rare to see. Yeah, those are rare. And I can't believe the Lexus hasn't come out with a new version of that, honestly. But yeah, that's cool. I actually saw a Corolla IM today as well. And it's yeah, I thought those were great. I did a review of one. I think it was actually back when it was the Scion IM, if I remember correctly. I don't know if it was switched over to the Toyota yet, but great little car, slow, but like the one I had the manual, it was fun. It handled great, and you knew you could beat on it like crazy, and it was going to run for the rest of the time. It's just that simple powertrain. Great stuff. And let me see. Carr says, hey, I'm new here. Well, welcome. Thanks for stopping by. He says, but was wondering, is there going to be a C8 Zora? I don't think so. I think actually the Corvette team confirmed ZR1X is the end. And that kind of makes sense because, what we were always hearing referred to as Zora was ZR1X. And I think Zora would have been way cooler. I understand, the consistency with the marketing and everything else, but like, that was always, I mean, I even remember back when there was the leaked plans back in like 2020 for what the Corvette was going to do for this generation. Like the ultimate version was always ZR1 with electric front motor was going to be the Zora, and that's ZR1X. So I think yeah, and I'm pretty sure that I remember reading that recently that like they're like, we are done with C8 now, and now because it also Grand Sport kind of coincided with that. That was always typically one of the later things towards the end. So they're like, yeah, Grand Sport was the last since that came after 01X here. Grand Sport's the last. Now we look forward to C9, which is going to be a couple of years, but I'm guessing we'll get that here right towards the end of the 2020s. Maybe, reveal, if they keep the 10 years, reveal in 2029, 2030 model year, something like that. Could be even a little sooner though. We'll see. But yeah, and welcome. Thanks so much for stopping by, and hope you enjoy the chat here tonight. And Chad says, I liked your Miata review. You made points that apply to many vehicles about base trims. Too bad I'll never fit in one, but they're cool cars. Yeah, that is the shame of Miatas. I know it is it's not for everyone, unfortunately. And that's why there are, I do like that there are some cars that get close. I think GR86 gets, it's different for sure, but a similar kind of thing. And there are other, I think, slightly larger convertibles that also kind of do a similar kind of magic, like the Boxster. It's been a long time since I've driven a Boxster, but something like that, obviously different. Again, that's mid-engine, but a similar kind of thing that gives you a little bit more space. But yeah, Miatas are really, really fun. I wonder if there's other stuff, like I don't know if like a Ariel Atom was really crazy. I'm sure that's much wilder than even a Miata, but like I wonder if those fit anyone any better, or like a Caterham, something like that. Maybe it could be even better, but a similar kind of thing, but I don't know if those would fit any better with taller folks or not. But yeah, I'm glad you like the Miata review, and hopefully I can at least allow you guys to live vicariously through me. And that's part of my motivation for why I did the POV video last year when I had a Miata for a week. Nothing else, you have a good VR headset or something like that. You can watch that in 4K and get to experience that from the vantage point of little old 5'9" me behind the wheel of that instead. And Michelle says, thoughts on Infiniti possibly ditching alphabet soup names. Yeah. I mean, they've said that in the past, but I don't know if they're actually going to. So was there any speculation this week about that, or maybe a new comment? I mean, they just launched QX80. We have QX65. I would be surprised because they're right in the middle of that, and I think we're going to see, Q60 or QX or Q50 come back. I mean, with the Skyline thing and stuff. So I don't see a way they could pull that off without it being super confusing at this point. But yeah, I'm always kind of opposed to the alphabet soup names. I think it's not hard to come up with names, especially now you got ChatGPT. If you really have no one creative on your team, they can churn out some names with ChatGPT, I'm sure, and give people something that I think would be more memorable than a bunch of letters and numbers. So good move, but I think it might be too late for Infiniti, honestly. So let me see here. RJ Lighting says, hey, Matt, how are you? I'm doing well. Hope you're doing well, too. He says, did you hear about Ben Thorne engine swapping a BRZ? I don't know who that is, but swapped BRZs always sound fun to me, so I'll have to check that out. But I'm curious what kind of motor they put in their BRZ there. And Theodore says, saw a Porsche 911 on my way home. On my way to QT gas station. While those cars are wide and super fast compared to my Stinger GT. Yeah, 911s are a very unique shape, and always fun to see one of those. And I'm glad that B. Mitchell's joining in for the drink with me there. And Michelle says, my aunt who works at Toyota, they got the Grand Highlander, got her second car, Corolla Cross Hybrid, perfect for my two cousins of driving age to practice driving on. Yeah, that's great. They're nice and small, very easy to drive. And that's great that she was able to get a second one. I'm surprised if they're just doing discounts or if they're actually giving her 2 company cars. But either way, that's a nice perk. So that's awesome. Um, Also, RJ's asking about Buick making the rear-wheel drive sedan based on the next gen Camaro. I'm all for it. I think it's awesome. I'm excited about it. I mean, just because the Alpha platform is phenomenal, and the more cars on the Alpha platform, the better. I've been the biggest cheerleader of that platform ever since its existence, honestly. Even like the early Alpha stuff, like the Cadillac CTS V Sport. I remember 11 years ago just freaking out over how good that thing drove, even way back then. And so I love that platform, and doing a Buick on it sounds great to me. I think Buick could use a sedan, and I've missed them not having one, and especially like you know even I would welcome another milk toast just front wheel drive blob, because I think that also would have a place. But like, to make it a proper rear wheel drive fantastic handling thing is going to be great. And I think also it could be a fun opportunity for them to differentiate it. If you have the Cadillac that's going to do the usual powertrain spread, 4 cylinder, 6 cylinder, V8. With the Buick, I'd love to see them just stick to the twin turbo V6. Maybe go into the GNX stuff with that. But I think it could also be a fun opportunity for them to maybe go a little bit different. So if the Cadillac's going to do more traditional stuff, I think it could give Buick a little bit of flexibility to maybe go a little bit different, maybe, introduce a hybrid or a plug-in hybrid or something like that. But I think, even if it's just, again, a Buick version of the CT5 and a cheaper CT5, I'm worried that would cannibalize CT5 sales a little bit, but like, I'm all for that. Again, democratize the stuff, get it cheaper, get it into the hands of more people that can enjoy it without having to, break the bank. I think that's great. So I'm very excited for it. And Chad says Mach-E versus Blazer EV, electric pony war in the making. I mean, I think some people tried to pair it up like that back when they first came out. I think, yeah, each car has its pros and cons. Blazer, I'm not in love with Blazer, though. I would definitely go Mach-E personally between those two. And I did. Well, back when we got our Mach-E back in the day. Let me see. Mr. 705 says, I was originally told 3 to 6 months wait for the RAV4. I gave them 5 color options to hopefully speed things up. I'll be getting white, not my first choice, but it'll do. Nice. Well, that's cool. And I guess you can always wrap it if you want to go crazy or something later. But that's at least I'm glad they started you off with some kind of window to expect, which is, yeah, definitely helpful. And Chad says, I was watching a video asking how many people it'd take to hold a smart car still while slamming on the gas. The answer is 4. Now we all know something useless but fun. Really? Only 4 people? That seems crazy to me that it wouldn't be more. Wow. I'm curious because there's different smart cars. Like, I feel like maybe that would be true for the gas one, but I feel like the electric one with instant torque, I feel like you could push 4 people out of the way from 0 at a standstill in an electric smart car, but maybe not. That's funny. Man, there's really a YouTube video out there for everything, I guess. That's crazy. And Chad, thank you so much for a super chat as well. He says Cadillac XLR version of the new Corvette would be crazy. I know. And so I think someone asked them about that. I think it was last year. I remember reading an article that was discussing that, and something like they didn't want to do it for some reason. I don't know why. I can't remember it being a good reason, but something like it was brought up and the board shot it down for some strange reason. But I think this generation was prime perfect for, that it's mid-engine. That if you want to have something more exotic, do that. But I think they were worried about just cannibalizing Corvette sales. And in their defense, Corvette is comfortable enough. Do you need a Cadillac version? I guess if you want to just one up people at the country club or something, but then you just go and buy a Z06 or whatever, because none of the Corvettes are so uncomfortable that it's a penalty box that you're beating yourself. It's not like they're going GT3 RS with them or something where it's really stiff and it's got a roll cage on. It's not that hardcore. So I feel like there's less of a need for something like that. But I thought I remember them saying or like rumors or suggestions that, maybe the C9 we could see something like that. Because here's the thing. I think now Cadillac's getting into Formula One, and it's too late to do a Cadillac version of C8 because again, C8 is kind of done now, and it's just kind of going to ride out with what it has for the next couple of years before a new one. So, but I think Cadillac does need a halo product. As amazing as CT5V Blackwing is, when you're in F1, it's pretty much expected, like, you need to have a supercar. Because you're generating all this goodwill and all this brand recognition. I mean, again, not like anyone doesn't know what Cadillac is, but like, you're pushing this racing image. And so typically, that's not something that's isolated just to the track. Like, you want to bring that to the street. And that's kind of part of the whole thing, even though it might not make sense from a business case standpoint. It's just like, this is kind of an expectation whenever you are deciding to compete in Formula One. So I think there will be a Cadillac supercar coming someday, and probably sooner rather than later, unless Cadillac gets full cold feet pretty quick and bails on the idea of F1 and stuff. But like, I think it's probably going to be something fairly. My guess would be it's going to be a variant of C9. I think that's the easy way to do it, but they're going to have to do something even further and amp it up more. And because of Cadillac's leadership, I mean, again, I don't want to hear I know people are going to be groaning about this, but like, part of me wonders if, an electric kind of highly advanced battery pack, XLR could kind of make sense in the 2030s when this car would likely launch. Again, we're not talking in 2026 mindset, we're talking in the future when there's more electric proliferation, and that, that ball has further rolled down the field there. So I think, I could see something like that. Like, okay, maybe we leave the gas stuff to Corvette, and then to truly differentiate, okay, we have the Cadillac be the electric version. I think that's kind of a good way to separate. And we're kind of already seeing this with Toyota. This is how they decided to play GRGT and new LFA. The Lexus can be the electric experimental kind of crazy one. And even if it flops, like, it's only meant for 500 people or whatever anyway, probably, so it doesn't matter. It's just a halo product. And, you want to have the craziest performance possible. And an electric version is the way you're going to get the fastest 0 to 60, get, all the fastest, highest horsepower, all that kind of stuff. I don't know if Cadillac's going to follow Lexus, but I think you could see something like that, especially just because Cadillac is very much an EV leader now. I mean, they are just gobbling up market share like there's no tomorrow. I mean, as far as the luxury EV SUVs goes, I mean, I think they're the leader now. I mean, it's just like, every segment they have it covered already when everyone else is still like, what do we do? Everyone else is like dipping their toes in the water, if that, and Cadillac's got a full lineup already. So, I mean, I think they're very proud of that, and they should be. And I think they're going to want to, keep leaning into that. So that's why I would bet on an XLR being electric in the 2030s and being that halo product there for them and differentiated enough, from the Corvette. So we'll see. But it's a fun thing to think about XLR. I hope it does come back in one form or another. And Juan, thank you so much for a very generous super chat. They said, vinyl records and dumb phones making a comeback. Cars are bringing back physical controls. Do you think we'll ever have modern cars scale back their screens and focus on an analog experience again? I think we'll see that for sure. I think, not in all cases, because I think there's still some companies, like we just saw that new C-Class electric that's coming. It's still doing the hyperscreen, even though they said, oh, we got feedback that, people are mad about having less buttons and stuff. And yet this new C-Class electric is still going to have this like screen that goes all the way to the air vents in the corners, and nothing else pretty much, a few little switches down below, but like, it's basically just, we put a screen here. You're welcome. Goodbye. And that's it. So, but I think that the feedback that, we've been hearing from a lot of companies, I mean, Hyundai has talked about this, Volkswagen has talked about this, everyone's putting buttons back and they realize that buttons are important. And we're also seeing some legislation, not in America, of course, but in Europe and even in China, pushing back. Like, China is now saying, okay, you got to have physical door handles and you got to have, more buttons on the inside. And this is a European thing, especially. They're starting to do more surveys and more studies that show that screens are more distracting. And I think that, even if consumer interest isn't enough to drive that change, but I think on its own is enough. But I think if you have legislation to further kind of shove the companies back in that direction, then I think that could certainly help. Everyone has different feelings about how they feel about legislation changing and shaping cars, but I think that even if we just leave it to the consumers, it just would maybe take longer. But I think that companies are starting to already get the message, like we need to go back to buttons. People want this. So yes, I think now, I mean, there are some that are going to go even further, like, Slate, for example, even though it's an EV, like, they are having no screen. I mean, you can, I think, add on like a phone mount for your phone. I think maybe they're offering like a little like Garmin tack on thing or something like that if you want, but like there's no screen in that really. I think the backup camera's in the rearview mirror, if I remember correctly, because that's the only thing you have to have a screen for. That's federal regulation. But other than that, like it's going to be roll up windows. It's back to basics. That's the whole beauty of the Slate, and I'm very excited to see how that does, because I think something like that does have appeal, especially to those vinyl record and dumb phone buyers. People want that comfort of physical stuff, less stuff to break, easier things to fix. So this is why, I mean, I'm a big cheerleader for Slate. I mean, maybe it's going to be garbage. I don't know. I hope I get my chance to review one at some point. And I'm going to be objective, even as badly as I want it to succeed. If it sucks, I'm going to say it's going to suck. But, I truly think that car could really change things, because no car company has had the bravery to go there. We've had some talk about it, and actually Dodge's CEO just here in the past couple of weeks has said, he asked, do you need a radio? And I think he's trying to I think his idea is getting to, either an economy car or a cheap sports car, and saying, maybe we do Slate, but instead of doing trucks, what if we do a Slate that's a car, or we do a Slate that's a Miata kind of thing, or something like that? Can you get down to a cheap price point and still have a really fun car? And he, as the Dodge CEO, kind of argued, like, you don't need a radio to have a good time in a car. You don't need all this stuff. And, I mean, I could kind of sense, even whenever, I chatted with him recently, the regulations are frustrating, for him, I think, because they could do more if they had the freedom and the flexibility. I think you can also go too far in the other direction if it's just a free for all and you don't need to have any safety equipment and you don't need to have all this stuff. Sure, we could pull airbags out of cars and make seatbelts optional and everything else if you want to really go crazy and save every penny you can. So I think there's a limit here of what makes sense responsibly, but I think things that aren't safety things, like, the things the Slate is getting rid of, are great. And I think hopefully, that brings back, some more of that here in cars, if that does well. But that has to do well. If Slate is as big of a hit as Maverick was when Maverick launched, then I think you really can see some change in the marketplace that, strips cars down a good bit. Because I think, affordability is terrible. Repos are up at record highs, higher than 2008 already. People desperately need affordable cars. And, you could also put some of the blame on the consumers. They should just go buy used. They shouldn't buy these expensive cars and overextend themselves. But, there are less options out there, on the new market. And not everyone wants to pay a used interest rate kind of thing. And they're willing to stretch for the better interest rate or whatever the case is. But like, it's, I think there's some appeal for that simpler thing. But whether we're talking about high-end sports cars, you see all these, Bugattis and stuff that are, ditching screens. The high-end buyers don't want it. The low-end buyers don't seem to want it. There's a lot of people in the middle there, though, that still do want it for sure and want to have all the high-tech stuff because it's fun or whatever. But I think people are getting burned out by that pretty quickly. And so I think it is a fad. I think it will kind of dial itself back. Now, how far back, I don't know. But I think that there will be a correction in the market as far as how much screen we have. I think people are kind of burned out. I see it in the comments section of my videos all the time. Again, whether that's a minority, a very vocal minority, or that is the majority remains to be seen. And that's kind of the hard thing as a product planner, is predicting where those trends will go. But I think this is why, again, keeping an eye on those cars that are daring to be different and are daring to take those chances will be a huge indicator of how far that'll go. But great question, and thanks so much for the super chat there, Juan. And Raphael says, what made SUVs take over? Is ride height the defining factor in a vehicle in the US? I think ride height's important, and there are a lot of people that just they like sitting up higher. I think it's a very complex thing psychologically, but I'll take my best stab at doing this in a concise manner. So I think there's a lot of things. I think early on, like I'm talking like the 1990s, it was a status thing primarily in the early years. I remember, I mean, even, I've talked to Beth about this in the past where, when she was, in middle school and high school and, the late 90s, early 2000s, it was like, whoa, they have an SUV. Like that was a status thing. And so I think for a while there, it was kind of that thing. And, you had, even in pop culture, all the cool rappers, what were they in? They were in the Navigators and the Escalades on, 24s and stuff, which, by the way, they were visionaries because now we finally got 24s from the factory. They were doing it 25 years ago. They were ahead of the curve, and I'm happy to give them credit for that. But it was a status thing, I think, for sure. I mean, obviously, you still had people rolling around in S classes and everything else, and that's still true to this day as well. But I think that it was kind of a status thing. But then I think that kind of driver burned out after a while, I think, for the most part, because no one really thinks, oh, well, you're richer than the person in the sedan or anything. It's just, I think now, as the rise of the SUV and also the pickup truck has taken over so much, I think there's really a safety component now of this instinctual, primal kind of, I need to have a bigger stick than the next guy kind of thing. And it's a safety thing. It's okay. You're surrounded by a bunch of giant vehicles. If you're in the small vehicle or you're the smallest guy in a boxing ring, like you're scared, you don't feel safe. You don't feel secure. And so I think there's a bigger need to sit up higher because you want to be, on a level playing field, at least mentally, with that F-150, even if obviously they're going to still cream you if you're in a, Corolla Cross or something. But you at least feel like you got a better chance, even if it's just a placebo effect. Like you do feel better, I think, and safer. And I mean, this is just like it's basic physics. I mean, I've been in Miatas looking up at giant 18-wheelers and it's uncomfortable. If you have any self-preservation instincts, it's uncomfortable, and it's a challenge. So I think there's now that, and as there's so many trucks everywhere now, obviously the numbers don't lie, they continue to sell, by the millions every year. It's just something I think people feel the need to, have that safety. And I mean, and I actually will admit I'm kind of guilty of this as well, of this, participating in this arms race, which doesn't help because you're perpetuating that. I mean, I guess I give myself credit because the Fiat is is the other polar opposite of that. But the Lyriq, that's kind of, some of the perk of an EV is, that thing's 6,000 pounds. And I know that Beth's a very safe driver. I know that I'm a very safe driver. So I'm not worried about being a risk to others. And obviously we have all the safety stuff turned on and the car will, intervene to protect others as well, in something. But I feel better if I know that, my family's out there driving around in a vehicle that is going to have a better physics equation up against these zillions of pickup trucks than, them being in, a regular, a Mazda CX-5, which would probably be our go-to pick if we were going for maybe before the new one with a big screen. But, before, CX-5 was one of my favorites. Like if we were going and sticking with gas, maybe that would have been it. Or even like Beth's old C-Class, sedan, she had the C300, a nice little sub 4,000 pound sedan, nice little car, very safe, but her being up higher, her being, with that extra weight, behind her, is something it does actually, bring me a little bit of comfort as well. So I'm totally guilty of this and I can kind of relate to that mentality. So I think it's again part of, being in America and being surrounded by pickup trucks. Now, if we were, in Europe, like when I was in Italy back in 2024, the biggest truck you're going to see is a Ranger. Even commercial trucks are, the size of like a Ford Transit typically. I mean, obviously there's still like, the big 18 wheelers, but they're a lot more rare. And, you're not seeing them usually plowing through the little countryside roads and stuff. They're just on the highway. So it's a more limited kind of experience too for that. And it's more, just usually a little more rare to see them, but you're just surrounded mostly by other hatchbacks. And that's, I wouldn't feel a need to have a giant car in a place like that. So I think it is certainly a symptom of our surroundings. And I think that's why they will have some staying power. But I mean, the new data has shown that, especially younger generations are, kind of perceiving crossovers as potentially being uncool, especially some of them that are not sporty, that aren't rugged. And this is why you're seeing companies kind of pivot to the rugged thing to cling on to the cool factor of these vehicles. And some of them are always going to be cool. The Broncos, the Wranglers, like they're actual legit off-roaders. Those I think are always going to stay cool. But I think that, the Kia Seltos, stuff like that, like, some of those like that is being reinvented as being more rugged and stuff here with this new generation we just saw. But, that's the kind of stuff that I think eventually, it just, again, everything goes in cycles. And so, if, older generations, it was, whoa, I have an SUV, I'm doing better than the next guy or whatever. And then now all those SUVs are being sold to older people who don't want to bend over to get down into a low car or whatever the case is. The idea is, okay, well, I'm young, I'm youthful, I can get down into a low slung car, I can get down into a sports car or whatever, or a sedan, just even a regular sedan, and so there's some of that appeal versus the, I don't need to bend over to get into a crossover. It's more of a, elderly seeming vehicle. It kind of takes on the same persona as a Buick station wagon from the 90s kind of thing. The cars that our parents drove are eventually uncool. We want the next thing, that's cooler in some way. So I think that's a little bit of, my download of the state of SUVs right now. And there's, I'm sure, a lot more that goes into it. Again, that's just my quick take on it. Curious if you guys have any other thoughts there on, how that has come to be where it is and why that is. But I think that's it. But I see Vishal chiming in as well. But people, feel safer sitting higher up. And let me see. I think, that's see. And Raphael says my main vehicle is a motorcycle, so this is something very odd to me. Yeah, and I can understand. Yeah, it's just everyone's got that different risk tolerance and things that more comfortable with. Let me see. And I see a chat says you can maneuver away, but God bless you for being a rider around all these distracted drivers. Yeah, that's another thing. I think so. That is a good important point to bring up, is the distracted drivers. That is a huge thing too. Is yes, not only are these people in giant vehicles, but they're distracted in giant vehicles. And yes, thankfully most of these newer cars have automatic emergency braking and lane keep assist and stuff to curtail some of that bad driving, hopefully, assuming all that stuff's been left on. But like, there's that too. Yeah. Like, 20 years ago, people weren't staring down at their phones and scrolling on Instagram, every waking moment. And so, I think that, you feel more at danger. I remember back in the days when, you saw the random crazy person eating a burger behind the wheel, or someone doing their makeup or something. Like, what the heck are they doing? And now it's just like, even just yesterday, Beth and I were driving around with our daughter, and like there's some guy just weaving all over the road. And it's so funny how, like, even the weaving over the road, like back in the day, it's like, oh, there's a drunk driver, you could spot it from a mile away and you were right every single time. And now it's like, nope, like they're all just looking at their phones. I mean, there still are sometimes drunk drivers, but like, it's just, so if everyone else is not paying attention, that's another reason. I think this is also part of why, I mean, this is just my feelings towards this, but I think that others would probably agree. I envision, once we do get to a society where we have a lot of ride sharing, a lot of autonomy, I don't know if it's gonna be 100%, for a long, long time, but once we get to a higher autonomy level, I think you will see more people be comfortable with smaller vehicles again. And you could see that trend kind of go back the other way if there was like, okay, all the dummies that are staring at their phones are now just driving in their driverless pods or whatever in the right hand lane. And every one of us who wants to actually participate in driving and be part of a society that's not glued to our phones, we can get out and enjoy ourselves again without having to worry about all the idiots. I think you could see, like, I would be more comfortable in driving a Miata if I know that all the distracted people are in the right hand lane in their, cyber cab or whatever the hell ends up actually making it to market. I would feel better, and I'm sure others would probably agree. And I think that's always, as much as everyone wants to, make autonomy out to be this boogeyman. And I think it could still be bad if insurance prices people out of being able to, drive affordably themselves. But, the upside, maybe only for the rich, we'll have to see. But, the upside is once we do get to that autonomous world, the left lane will always be clear for us, all of us enthusiasts. Like, it's going to be just open season because every bad driver will not be on the road driving themselves anymore, and we can actually go out and enjoy ourselves, assuming that every enthusiast is responsible, which is I'm being very generous there. But those of us that can actually drive well and safely, it's gonna be great because you won't have any of these annoyances that we have now dealing with all the idiots. So I'm trying to see the glass half full. Maybe again it'll be priced out of attainability for a lot of people. I don't know, but I'd like to think that maybe there will be some kind of price control on insurance, legislatively maybe, that allows us to keep driving ourselves if we choose to. And then we can actually have a great time and have roads that are better for enthusiasts than they ever have been in the history of the car. So we'll see. But let me see. So Luke says, thank you so much for the super chat, Luke. He says, in my eyes, what's old is once new again. I feel like sedans take over again eventually. I agree. My buddy always says, ooh, a mom car whenever he sees a crossover. So there you have it. Yeah, I think there's a lot of people that are starting to feel that way. And there's also other weird trends happening, like minivans are getting popular again, which could be another symptom of like the SUV thing, of like people are just burned out by SUVs so much so that a minivan is cooler, even though it used to be exactly the opposite. But there's a huge, I think minivan sales in general were up like 27% or something last year. Don't quote me on the number, but it was like a legitimate percentage of huge minivan growth. And I can't help but think that is SUV burnout. Because I mean, as far as SUVs goes, like there's never been better choices. I think the 3-row stuff, there's so many phenomenal choices. It's the market is saturated with a ton of good stuff. There's no reason for people to be running to minivans because of the products, aside from the fact you just don't like that body style anymore. I think there's a lot of perks in minivans, that maybe people are slowly coming around to them, or maybe there's a lot of influencers that are really changing minds and perceptions out there. I don't know, but to me, that's another sign SUVs are falling out of favor slowly, still massively popular. But I think that's the fact that there's essentially 4 minivans on the market, and you only have 4 choices in that whole segment, and they're all growing really quickly, even though some of them are very stale. 2 out of the 4 are very stale. That's an impressive performance for a pretty dead segment. So I think that there is some real momentum there away from SUVs. We'll see how long it lasts and how far it goes. But yeah, it's crazy. So let me see here. I don't want to get too far behind on anyone who's waiting for their other answers, but let me see, where were we here? So Luke said earlier, I'm looking forward to what the exterior is going to be in terms of power, powertrains, power numbers. Yeah. They've said now, we know there's going to be a regular V6 and there's going to be a regular hybrid V6 as well. So I think the V6, it'll probably, I'm guessing, be an evolution of the Frontier motor, but I would assume you're going to get basically Frontier power, which is 310 horsepower. It's really solid. But I think that's kind of what you can expect from a basic Stera, 310 horsepower or thereabouts. Hybrid will be more, but I think that's kind of where it's going there. And I also was happy to hear this week, that they confirmed it's going to be an under $40,000 starting price, which again, it's still $40,000, but it could have very easily had to be, under 50 to start or something like that. So I think, assuming they bring their A game, I mean, that could be a good value. We'll have to see, but um, yeah, I'm excited for Xterra too. And let me see here. So Raphael says I'd be more likely to get mine from a dealer. Yeah, as far as maybe the Mustang there, yeah. And RJ says, are you looking forward to the next gen Q50? Absolutely, and GM rear drive. Yeah, I'm so excited for both of those for sure. And let me see. Um, Also, RJ says, I recently saw people importing FG Falcons from Australia into the US. We've got a lot of Aussie car fans here. That's awesome. I didn't hear about that happening, but that's great news. And yeah, I hope that a lot of people enjoy them. I actually saw I think it was this past week. I didn't mention it. I saw a Chevy Caprice, like the police car version, like the new Caprice, which was based on the same thing as the G8, kind of a precursor of the Chevy SS. Saw one of those that had been converted to civilian use here. That was straight piped, super loud. It was like this white, just regular sedan, super loud, but sounded great. And happy to see someone out in one of those. But that's a rare. You don't see too many of those Caprices just running around that aren't. I mean, most of them aren't police duty anymore. But seeing the few of those were imported, seeing those over here, another Aussie car is awesome to see. So, yeah, I love. I'm wondering if people are gonna start bringing Utes over, because I feel like that could have a lot of appeal here in America. We love our trucks and people like Mavericks. You would think people would be lining up to import some Utes, but it doesn't seem like that's really the case. And Lance says, I honestly wouldn't mind having a Miata. Unfortunately, I'm far too big to fit comfortably in one, and my knees are shot, so a manual is out of the question. Yeah. I mean, the automatic's fine, but yeah, if you want the best Miata experience, manual's definitely the way to go. And Chad says, is there a reason why I'm seeing tons of few-year-old Maseratis in my not wealthy area? I'm assuming leases ran out, then got bought, but it's noticeably a lot. Yeah, they're just really cheap on the used market. I think that's part of the appeal there. Yeah, I mean, even like in my neighborhood, there's someone who has, and I don't live in like a super rich neighborhood. There's someone who's got a Maserati. I think it's a Ghibli, but that's like a $18,000 car now or something, And so it's, especially if you want to have something different, unique, or again, you also like showing off a little bit. Having a Maserati is a really cost-effective way of doing that, assuming it holds together, which is a big assumption. But if you get lucky, or you're able to kind of do some stuff yourself, or find a good independent shop that's not going to give you Maserati labor rates, you might actually have pretty fun car. And I reviewed a tuned Ghibli. Like, there actually is an aftermarket for those, believe it or not. And like, that tuned Ghibli was, I mean, the thing was a little rocket. It was great. And Ghibli's a good car, by the way. Very underrated and underappreciated. But yeah, but I'm guessing it's just they're dirt cheap, and it's it's an impressive nameplate. It still holds value even if no one really likes them on the new market. It's a great value used. And I mean, I talked about this in my Cali review, a couple of weeks back too. They're what was that? The one I had was like 110,000 or something. And even Maserati knew is offering like 20 grand off to start, like not even negotiating. Like, that's just like the upfront price. And then of course you can twist their arm a whole lot, I'm sure, to get rid of it, for them. So, I mean, then when those are on the used market, like, I think I can remember the used pricing. I talked about it in my review, but the Crecali's used, I think they're like, even the Trofeo version, which again, twin turbo V6 sounds phenomenal. Even that is, I think they're like under 70, like lightly used, very recent model years and stuff. I mean, that's like, okay, now you're undercutting, Macan turbo used pricing in some cases, and some others. I mean, then it turns into a really good value. That's another one like the Prelude I was talking about earlier. Doesn't make sense in the new market. Used market, absolutely. And that's another one where I did that review partially with the used mindset of people looking for these on the used market. Watch that review, do that research, and that's where that gets to be a really sweet car, once the money is right. But yeah, I'm guessing it's just that they're cheap. And Raphael says, a dark horse with the dash screen. Shame on you, Matt. Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'd much rather recommend a Mach 1 or a Bullet to someone. But, if you got to go new market, yeah, the dark horse. I mean, I don't love the dash for sure. It's still, I would never buy one myself. But if you're someone who doesn't get hung up on the heritage of Mustang as much as I do, Dark Horse is a good car, I'm sure. I mean, again, if it's Mach 1, just with the slight tweaks of S650, it's a good car, I'm sure. I'm hoping to review a Dark Horse here soon. I've been working with the Ford dealers. I told them they have Dark Horses new. First I told them I only want to do a manual because the automatic, I don't know. I mean, people buy the automatics, but like the whole point of going for the Dark Horse, in my opinion, is to get the Tremec. If you're not going to do that, you're better off saving the money. Get a performance pack, level 1 Mustang GT, and throw your own, mild tune on it, or intakes, or even the throttle bodies from the Dark Horse. Get your 20 extra horsepower for way less than the Dark Horse. I think Dark Horse only makes sense if you're buying the manual. And then, I just told them that I don't want to review a new one because some people do care about break-in periods, and they don't want, some dummy on YouTube, beating the crap out of a car they're going to buy. So I'm like, I don't want to do a new one. I want to do a used Dark Horse. Let me know when a used one comes in. And I'll do that then. But, the Dark Horse is a sweet car, I think, still. Let me see. RJ says, Matt, if Fifth Gear were ever to have an American version, I'd love to see you as one of the hosts. I would. That's always been the dream. I started this doing, a Top Gear kind of knockoff, in my own little one-man band kind of way. That was my motivation for doing the car reviews. That's why I wanted to be a car reviewer, was Top Gear. I mean, I also really enjoyed car magazines as a kid. So I think it predates Top Gear, but especially doing it on video, Top Gear was entirely that. And Fifth Gear as well. Tiffany Dell, legend. And so, and even like the weekly update, that was inspired by the news segment on Top Gear. That was what I was doing. And even if you watch the early weekly updates, where it was like when I would talk about the Mustang, and then I would cut to me in the office, doing the stuff, I'd be like, right. And so for the news, just like James May always said, that was exactly what I was doing. So I would love to do that. I mean, yeah, it's I'm very happy for the guys that got the Top Gear deal here for Top Gear America, or I guess Top Gear UK, with the Throttle House guys. I mean, they're phenomenal, and they totally deserve it way more than I ever would. But something like that was always kind of the dream, and that was kind of the hope, is maybe something that's got big enough that I didn't have to do all my own filming and all my own editing, and I could just I wanted to be Jeremy Clarkson. I wanted to show up, drive, have fun, and go home, and maybe make some decent money doing it. But that was always the goal. Unfortunately, I'm still kind of stuck in the one-man band thing here. But I would love to make that transition, even though TV's pretty dead at this point. I'd love to do that. But I think there's a lot of others that Savage Geese. I don't know why they don't have a TV show yet. And that Savage Geese, their stuff should have gotten picked up by Netflix or something. If there was any smart decision makers on these streaming platforms when it comes to car content, they should have picked up a bunch of those top car YouTubers a long time ago. But I would love to see a new Fifth Gear. If anyone can vote, or if there's any executives watching, I'm absolutely open to doing something like that. It would be a dream come true. And I'm actually bummed because we shot a pilot for that was what the pull apart challenge was. It wasn't a driving show, but we filmed it was a web series, but it was essentially a pilot that was again, me, Chris Fix. For anyone who's been watching for a long time already knows this, but me, Chris Fix, Humble Mechanic, Eric the Car Guy, Engineering Explained, Brian's Mobile One, and Bleep and Jeep, and then what was the other one? Matt from, I can't remember what his channel is called again, one of the other off-roading channels, but all of us partnered up and did this show, and it was doing a build for charity, and it was great. I mean, it was kind of very much in line with the other automotive reality TV show kind of things, but it was great. I mean, it was a full TV film crew. It was the usual kind of thing where you had cutaways. We had our little interviews that we did, and um, cameras following us around and everything else. I mean, it was fun. I mean, it was so fun. We filmed that over, I think it was what, two days of filming, 2 or 3 days. We did that. And I was like, yep, I could totally do this and be very, very happy. And we even had one of the guy who was the producer for the show. He like worked with Anthony Bourdain. He did a bunch of like Food Network shows and stuff. So we had like real firepower there, trying to sell this and shopping it around. Just never got picked up by anyone. But if you want to see a little sample of what it would have been like if I would have been part of a reality show, it's still on YouTube, I believe. You look up the Pull Apart Challenge, you can see the whole series. I can't remember. I think there was 4 or 5 episodes, something. I can't remember exactly. It's because we shot that in 2017, I think. But definitely, it's still really cool. And yeah, it was a fun little thing that we did. And I welded for the first time on camera with that. Brian's Mobile One teaching me how to weld there, and really, really cool stuff. So definitely check that out if you never have. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Anyway, so Lancewell says a good way to look at used German and exotic cars is if you can't afford to own it new, you can't afford to own it when it's used. That's absolutely the common thinking there. I think there are some ways to mitigate that. If you can get a good extended warranty, especially from like the dealer or from the manufacturer, there's better ways to go about this. And actually, like especially in like the exotic world, like Ferrari has a really good certified pre-owned program. I think you can actually extend it out like 10 years or something, which I'm sure it costs a lot of money, but you pay that up front. You can probably bundle it into financing. There are ways to do it without completely losing your shirt, but it is expensive, and you still gotta pony up for that warranty or whatever the case is. So it's still definitely a high buy-in, especially when you're talking about the real exotic stuff. And RJ says, would you ever do a collab with Tedward? Absolutely, I'd love to collab, and I've ran across him even just it was the Charger RT program here in Vermont. Was chatting with him and Topher, doing videos together, and so yeah, I'm always open to collabs. Sometimes the collab stuff is a little bit of a challenge on a lot of these drive programs, because sometimes we are actually just drive partners, and that makes it very easy, because then it's like, well, I'm on their video, they're on mine, and it's just kind of a very natural thing. But then there's other times where we're just all so busy getting all of our content that we just run out of time. We don't have time to just like goof off and like hang out and be in each other's videos and stuff. So like that's some of the the main challenge a lot of times. But like, I mean, I do collab when I can. And for example, Eddie X, if any of you watch his channel, great guy. Whenever we were on the Cadillac Optic V, which is a review, I don't think very many people watched his or mine, because it's very limited interest in that car. I guess as awesome as that car is, I really actually enjoyed it. It's a shame people aren't into it. But like, I collaborated in that with him. So I was in his, I can't remember I think I may have had him make a little cameo on mine too. But he actually asked me like my thoughts on camera there, and in his video. That was very kind of him to do that collab there. And so I also think with my videos too, it's hard to do it in my regular reviews, because I'm always already up against the clock. The longer the video is, the harder it is to get people to click. And I'm so damn verbose on my own, and it's my own worst enemy. I always am trying to get the video shorter and adding in another perspective and another, person to bounce off of, which I then talk along with and, have a conversation. I'm sure that's probably more interesting. But trying to do that in a regular review where I also need to cover everything else that I feel like I need to cover in a review just makes it way too long. So really collabs, I think, would be better suited for a standalone video after the fact, which I could do again if I had that extra time. But again, it's just usually the time is the main factor. But I mean, we're also trying to do in the future another one of these AVA events, which are very conducive to collabs. And if you watch some of my old collabs, I used to do a ton of collabs. I did a video on which is better. It was a comparison of which is more fun per dollar, the Elantra or Veloster N versus Miata back when ND2 first came out. And that it was me and Jason from Engineering Explained, and we drove around. We talked, back and forth. We first rode in the one, we rode in the other. We were kind of giving our thoughts and kind of just having a blast. I mean, me and him get along great. So just me and him just kind of having fun in two fun cars, just talking cars and kind of, going back and forth. Like, that was really fun. So I definitely want to do more of that stuff. It's just, again, usually the time is always the component that gets in the way. But I want to do more in the future. And yeah, Tedward's great. A very, very nice guy. And Chad says Jordan had an SSR come through his drive-through yesterday. That's cool. We were talking about how they could justify things like that, the Solstice, HHR, even PT Cruiser styling back then. A lot of character. Yeah, they did have a lot of character, but I mean, that's what sold. I mean, PT Cruiser was a huge hit. HHR also even wasn't as big of a hit, but just by extension of being another PT Cruiser alternative, pretty much sold really well too. And Solstice was, a product of Bob Lutz and, these guys who really, before the bean counters really came in and kind of killed a lot of these business cases, they were able to really lean on the halo effect to get some of these things, greenlit for production. So I think there was just a different culture in a lot of cases back then. And, there was really this renaissance in the early 2000s of all these retro cars, all these fun, really just cool cars. And it was also, a time when, again, this was kind of boomer midlife crisis or, that kind of time period where, again, there's a lot of interest in smaller cars. This was also a time before, again, SUVs were everywhere. I mean, there was a lot, but, this was when you could still have sport compacts in decent numbers and two doors in decent numbers and convertibles in decent numbers that weren't all luxury or high end. You had mainstream Chrysler Sebring still being sold and stuff like that, and so different time. I miss it for sure. And Engrin Shift says, what's the news with the Hyundai Elantra N? I don't think we've heard much yet. It sounds like, new Elantra is coming this year. They've confirmed that. I'm guessing Elantra N will come next year. The rumor was it'll go up to a 2.5 liter engine. We'll see if it turns out to be true. They do actually do that. My concern is if they do that, we'll lose the manual though. I think it comes down. Well, the biggest clue to me will be how different the Elantra is. I think, if they just kind of, it's going to be the same basis as the K4, that evolved platform. If that is, what they're using, which I'm pretty sure they are, then I could see, because you see carryover motors in K4. So I would honestly just say leave it as it is. Maybe do a new tune if you want to get a little more power out of it, but just take a Elantra N motor, put it in the better platform, and do that. And then you keep the manual, you keep the great dual clutch, hopefully. I think that's kind of my hope for Elantra N. I don't want it to really change because I think, it's always a domino effect. Okay. So let's say you're not happy with 280 horsepower or whatever, let's say, we'd like to see over 300 or you'd like to see 320 or something like that to maybe take this, make it neck and neck with Civic Type R, for example. From an OEM standpoint, the second you go up 20 horsepower, you go up 40 horsepower, they're going to feel a need to boost the brakes. So, okay, now we got bigger brakes. Okay. And then, we need to make sure that everything else is heavier duty. We got to have heavier duty cooling. We got to do this and that and the other. Before you know it, you got a bunch of extra cost that then makes it too expensive. And then it, drives up the price. And then Elantra N starts at 40 instead of 35. That's kind of my concern. So I would rather than just actually leave it and just phone it in. Just keep it cheap. Don't try and overachieve. Just leave it as it is. And I think that would be fine. You just have the new styling, you have the better interior space, and nicer, tech or whatever, and then call it a day and just leave it at that. I think that's my hope, but I don't know any actual info, unfortunately. Sorry, Engrin. And Luke says, okay, talking about the left lane construction stuff. He says he feels Luke is trucker and says he feels wrong being over there, even though the signs are telling me to. Yeah, I'm sure that's probably uncomfortable, and probably also for people who don't know that that's the case, are mad and probably being ragey and stuff too. But Chad says the construction zone that's awful. I go through daily in the middle. They're rebuilding a bridge that goes over the interstate, and I don't know how it's legal. There's always crashes there. Sounds like Florida, unfortunately. um, and let me see. OME says, I pull the trigger on a GLE 450. What do you think? GLEs are great. It's a nice, comfy vehicle. I mean, personally, I think I like the X5 a little bit better, but I think GLE is, it's really comfy. I did a GLE 450 way back when this generation first came out, and I was really impressed. It's very comfy. Even the one I had was a rare press car that had the active motion suspension, like the first generation of that. And man, that was a wild suspension in that car. I mean, you can like probably 3 people have watched that review in the past 5 years, but like that thing, if you see, I was going around corners, the GLE with that active motion suspension, it was really aggressive with how it leaned. I felt like I was on a motorcycle. I'm not even exaggerating. Like when I turned, I mean, that whole car leaned into the turn, and I've never felt, there's never ever, I mean, maybe the new stuff that I haven't experienced yet, like the Panamera with that E motion kind of stuff too, maybe does this. I don't know. But like that GLE had a more active and exciting suspension than anything else I've ever reviewed ever, still to this day. Almost 1,000 cars, nothing leaned in corners like that GLE did. Truly wild. And again, it's a shame because it was a rare option. I think maybe, I don't even know how many people went for it, but it was like $4,500. This is pre-inflation. So $4,500, which now the equivalent is probably what, 6 or 7 grand. I mean, it was expensive, especially in a GLE. Probably not a lot of people felt it was worthwhile, but man, that was a wild car with that suspension, and also a ton of power in that 450 too. Very nice, power plant in that. So I hope you enjoy your GLE, and thanks for stopping by. RJ says, y'all are the backbone of the economy. What kind of truck? Okay, I'm talking to Luke there. Yeah, I appreciate the trucker support because I agree. I mean, and that's one of the other reasons why I don't love diesel being expensive, because that affects everything that those truckers bring us. And B. Mitchell says, as for the Lobo, I'm going head to head with the dealer in New Brighton. I drove that one and like it, but we are $2,000 apart. They're lowballing my trade-in. However, they had hail on Friday. Oof. That's unfortunate. Unless you're cool with a hail special. If it's not too badly banged up, take it off their hands before insurance does. I don't know. But Vishal says a new article came out 2 days ago that supposedly Infiniti is reevaluating their current naming structure. Interesting. Okay, cool. Well, we'll have to see how that pans out there. I feel like it'd be really hard for them to pull it off. But let me see. B. Mitchell said, I figure that they'll either pay my price or they'll tell me to get stuffed. I'm fine either way. Well, and that's what gives you the power that, in those negotiations, they can pretty quickly figure out, who has the power in that situation. And if you're the kind who's happy to walk away, then you have all the power. And that's the strongest thing you can do is leave it. And, if it's a hot car, maybe you don't have a whole lot of power because of that. If they feel they can just go and sell it to someone else. But if you walk in and you're interested in a car that no one else is interested in, I mean, you hold all the cars there. Also, Chad, thank you so much for gifting another membership. I really appreciate that. And Lancelot, thank you so much for another super chat. He says, is the active motion suspension the one that bounced up and down like the vehicle had spinners? Yes, that is it. It was also in the GLS. I think the GLS might have been the first to do the bounce, but the GLE did it too. Because because that was we had because we had it in the GLE too. Because that was during one of those AVA events actually, where that thing you could have it bounce, which is the like getting out of sand mode supposedly. And then that was part of it. Yeah, it was the bouncing and then the leaning. But it was some really fun drive modes in that thing. It was wild. And thank you so much again for the super chat there, Lanswath. And let me see. I'm gonna, even though we haven't mentioned Jared Corolla again, I'm not gonna let this scotch go to waste. So I'm gonna do another cheers here with anyone who wants to cheers with me. We've got only another like half an hour or so here, assuming we actually don't go over this time, which I'm happy if we do. But cheers to all of you. So let me see here. I see more of the discussion there about the 18 wheelers. And RJ said, almost 5 years ago, I was harassed by JDM fanboys for calling the Skyline and the Q50 the same car. Well, that's what they were. Yeah. I mean, you look in Japan, all you had to do was go to, nissan.jp.co or whatever, to go to the Japanese site and, you'd see it right there. Let's see. RJ says Ben Thorne is one of the co-hosts and founders of Gears and Gasoline. Oh, cool. Okay. I think I met him a long time ago. I think I was on an event with him. It was like me, him, and David Patterson all chatting. Yeah, I've met him a couple of times. I think I know the Gears and Gasoline guy. I think if he was one of the founders, I know the guy who started Gears and Gasoline. I'm pretty sure that's. I feel bad I don't remember his name, but yeah, I think I just never come across him too often anymore. I don't think he does too many of the new car stuff, but that's awesome. He's playing around with the BRZ. I'll have to check that out. And I haven't followed along with his stuff recently. But Raphael says, I have a black TRD and it's parked next to a white TRD at Walmart. That was pretty cool. That's fun. Luke says, I remember the one Infinity that was a rebadged Mercedes GLA. That was a weird vehicle. Yeah, that was a weird collab. You're right. Yeah, that was the QX30, I think. Yeah, QX30. Just a GLA, which was, probably one of the worst Infinities to buy if you're looking for long-term reliability. And sorry, Vishal had the answer right there beneath that other comment. So yeah. So let me see here. I love also all the chatting you guys are doing tonight with each other. That's always fun when the community communes. And also, I will shameless plug. It's been a while, but I do also still have a Discord server for members. So if you are a member, or if you'd like to become a member, that's one of the perks of being a member. Send me a message if you're not in the Discord and you'd like to be in the Discord. It's pretty dead, honestly, at this point. Not a lot of conversation, but that was kind of the idea behind the Discord, is to have a platform for you guys to be able to kind of just chat and within the community here. Happy to always see it here in this too. And there's also, I think, this, the new community page here on this channel where you can just kind of make your own posts and people can kind of chat and interact there too. But the Discord is kind of a fun, just like group chat kind of thing if you're interested in chatting with others here. So yeah, definitely send me a message, email, whatever. Always happy to get any of those members into the Discord there. Let me see. So ICB Mitchell says that a Buick sedan is way overdue, especially in Fort Lauderdale or Mesa, Arizona retirement parks as an overstuffed luxury sedan. I mean, it would do great as that too. But I think it doesn't have to be boring. We'll see what happens. Chad says, if Chinese manufactured cars start finding their way in, what domestic manufacturers do you think stand a chance? Ford and GM, especially on the luxury side. Mainstream, I think GM can do good, cheap cars, not all the time, but they actually have a passion for affordable cars, and they've proven that, with Bolt. They've proven this with all the other cheap stuff. Trax being a phenomenal value at 23 grand. There's a lot of companies that talk out of both sides of their mouth when it comes to, saying they care about that stuff and then not actually putting out product. But like GM actually cares because they have so many actual cheap products that you can buy that are actually like good cars, especially now. So I'd say, I don't think Stellantis stands a chance. They would have to just rebadge a bunch of Chinese stuff, I think. But I think Ford is taking this seriously. This is why they're, hell bent on getting this 30 grand electric truck out. And and Jim Farley, again, he daily drove one of the Xomis, or I don't know. There's a zillion. I think there's actually 150 Chinese car brands, which makes me feel a little less bad about not knowing them. But like, there's so many. But it was one of the main ones that he daily drove and was really impressed with. So he gets it. I mean, he said in the past, like, if they don't catch up, like, it is an extinction level event for the Western car companies. But I think that it's, at the end of the day, affordability is the most important thing. And I was actually just talking to someone today who is very, very intelligent when it comes to the economy and stuff. They're actually a professor in economics. And they, and we were kind of talking, and it's like, look, like the bottom line is like, why should we all drive cars that are $10,000 more expensive if, if the companies that are here are not going to put it out? Why should we all have to pay that extra just to keep that auto industry going here whenever the Chinese have offered, like they're going to build stuff here? Like that's, I think part of the mentality is, even Trump said, if they build them here, we don't have any issues. And then, right after that at CES this year in January, Geely, said, probably about 2 to 3 years is when they're planning on coming in, which is when we'll most likely have more stable policy with, a different administration. We'll probably have a more green policy again and regulations again and incentives, hopefully, for the electrification stuff again. And Geely is expecting that. And that's why they're timing it around conveniently right around the beginning of 2029 is when they're probably going to come in with something. But so I think that, there's a lot of stuff that I think is just conspiring to, even if some of these workers do get displaced, there's hopefully going to be new opportunities for them. It's the same as the AI stuff. It's like, do you just fight that and just try and kill it? Or do you embrace it? You try and, transition those people into other sectors where there's desperate need. A lot of these factory workers that are currently assembling overpriced cars, they'd make great electricians because they understand how wiring harnesses work, or they make, great, any of these blue collar jobs that just can't get enough workers. I think there's plenty of opportunities elsewhere. That doesn't mean it needs to be, a terrible thing for the economy if, you have some of these factories that end up even going overseas if you don't have, all the production here. But I think, it's clearly been shown companies are willing to build factories. And we just saw Hyundai commit to a new steel plant in Louisiana that's coming online in a couple of years. And, that's the whole thing with this new, what do they call it? The Hyundai Boulder concept is that's, going to be built in America, engineered in America using American made steel by Hyundai, but, doing their whole vertical integration like they do in South Korea, bringing that whole model over here to the States. So, they are willing to invest, and a lot of that stuff was before this, a lot of these, like that new meta plant in Georgia that Hyundai has that's currently operational, that was brought in, with all the incentives to the EV stuff, and all the giant manufacturing boost that came in the last administration, so I think it doesn't have to be something you wait till 2029 for. And that's why these companies are jumping in now, knowing they're not going to get the payoff for that until after this administration. But I think, very long answer. I apologize. I'm rambling all over the place here, but I think that, that's really, why I think Ford gets it. I think, GM gets it, but I think that all these companies, are going to try their best. I think Hyundai also is really good with, they're already starting to use some robots in production in South Korea. So I think that they get it because they know that that's one of the important factors is, the robots kind of coming in and making that stuff really high quality and making it cheaply. And really that's the best way to compete with the Chinese is, get your labor costs down and get your quality up, so that's, so I know, I guess Hyundai's not a domestic brand, but I think, GM and Ford for sure. I just, Stellantis is just, they're not looking past 2029, in my opinion. They have the EV stuff waiting in the wings, but will it be competitive whenever they finally need it? If they're not innovating and they're not putting it out on the market to find the flaws and improve things, I don't know. We'll see. At least they have the European companies that aren't going backwards. But, I don't know. I think by the time Ram gets around to putting out the Ram Charger and stuff, Ford will already have a world-class plug-in hybrid truck, and GM probably will as well, so we'll see. But it's going to be wild. It's going to be wild to watch here the next 10 years, I think. Let me see. So Chad says, they tell you that using automotive soy sauce for oil is recommended, but as soon as the engines blow, they tell you to go to actual oil, at least in GM's case. Interesting. Yeah, so some of that is the emission stuff, which I thought that was going to be a component that got changed quickly once, all the regulations went out the window is that, they're going to go to thicker oil because that is typically, less efficient, but better for long-term stuff. And if they don't care about the efficiency component for, the current time period here, then, I thought that would be something they would have switched pretty quickly. But it seems like everyone's kind of sticking with, again, just the plan and sticking with what they've done for a while and just, letting it ride. And let me see. So I see all the discussion we talked about earlier here. Ben says, hey, Matt, have you ever been as far even as decided to do look more like, sorry, I'm trying to, maybe there's a typo there. Let me see. I don't see any follow-up. So it says, have you ever been as far even as decided to do look more like, sorry, I just don't understand your question. Ben, definitely feel free to ask it again here. I'll keep an eye out for it, but I don't even know what you're asking, so I'm not even going to attempt an answer there. Michelle says, as a Gen Z car person, I really prefer sedans right now. That seems to be the trend. Let me see. Lightning says, distracted drivers are in a danger for sure. And Michelle says 25, almost 26. I think sedans now are appealing to this age demographic than SUVs. I think so for sure. Michelle says, was the car weaving on the road a Nissan Altima? 9 times out of 10, it always is. That's absolutely true. I think the one we saw the other day that was weaving was not. It was some kind of truck, I think, but I can't remember what kind. Let me see. Lightning's also asking, could Ford re-enter the minivan segment? I don't think they have much interest. I think they kind of shot down the minivan idea. Someone brought that up to Farley not too long ago, and I think he shot it down, if I remember correctly. So yeah, maybe they'll try an electric thing, but I think the Volkswagen, ID Buzz is a cautionary tale that it's an uphill battle unless you make it cheap, which is, tough until battery costs get a little bit lower, I think. So, I think it's probably not going to be a thing that Ford tries to enter. And Vishal says, I think minivans could be nostalgia buyers who were driven around in minivans as kids and they want to do the same for their kids. Yeah, there could be some of that for sure. They remember the perks, or they remember, the fond memories of that. That's true. There could be some of that that's at play. But I think it also goes both ways. I think like Beth, for example, doesn't like minivans personally because she grew up in minivans, and I guess they always were kind of just, again, her parents uncool cars kind of thing, and so she does not want to ever own a minivan. I mean, we don't need to anyway. It's way overkill for us. But that's one thing she was like, absolutely not. Never a minivan for her. And Chad says, an all-wheel drive or 4x4 conversion van with plug-in hybrid drivetrain would be a great retirement vehicle to travel. That's true, actually. That would be, I'm surprised we're not seeing a resurgence of conversion vans because I think the time is right. I mean, we're seeing van life stuff, and surely you would think companies would be trying to cash in on that on the OEM side, but I mean, there's really nothing like that. Yeah. Could be an opportunity. I mean, there's all these, crazy Japanese vans that are kind of these rolling living rooms. I mean, you could do something there if they had the bravery, but I think they just, none of them want to try it out. Underdog says, ever since I got my Miata, I tend to only drive it on Sunday mornings when everyone is sleeping, in or at church, or I go out to the countryside for a drive, never during rush hour. That's a great way to do it. Yeah, for sure. That's one of the best times to drive, especially the early morning. So it's tough, especially if you go to bed late. But if you're a disciplined person that can get up early and not feel like crap when you do, it's really rewarding to have those early morning drives. I remember a few of those back in the day. Gavin says, I feel the same. Had multiple generation GTIs, got a 4Runner, and after 4 years, I want to go back into my GLI. Nice. I mean, it's, I think some people, it's fun to try, but I think that once you enjoy and once you've grown to appreciate good handling and just that ease of use of, parking and it's everything being smaller and lighter and easier, it's just, I don't know, maybe it's just my bias, but I'm right there with you. I love the small stuff. That's why I love my Fiat 500e. Obviously I'd much rather have the bullets still if I had the money, but like, that little Fiat was it's so small, it's so easy. I can just zip around everywhere. It's just a fun little car to drive for that reason. And Luke says, I'm wondering what the hybrid Xterra will be. Maybe the 3-liter V6 out of the Z with a hybrid, or a 3.5 Pathfinder with a hybrid. Yeah, I don't know. I'm guessing it's going to be a hybridized version of the Frontier motor, because they've also been talking about, I think they actually confirmed Frontier will get either a hybrid or plug-in hybrid version. I think they said plug-in hybrid, but it would make sense to share the same thing with Xterra. So it might just be a regular hybrid, but they're going to hybridize Frontier. So I'm guessing it's just going to, again, take that same engine. Maybe they'll downsize, but when you look at the Nissan engine portfolio, unless there's something new, as far as body on frame stuff, because you probably can't use the e-Power stuff that, Nissan's coming out with in the Rogue and stuff. So you have to do something different. So I'm guessing they're going to just from the ground up, just hybridize. And, if we're really going to go out on a limb here, they're talking about R36 GTR being hybridized. It would behoove them to maybe do a V6 hybrid that can maybe mate up to both engines. Obviously, very different applications, but just from a compatibility standpoint, if you engineer a hybrid system that works with a V6, you kind of kill two birds with one stone. You put it in the truck stuff, and it also could, again, also be thrown into Pathfinder as well. So you're winning there. And then you can drop it into GTR, tweak it, for that unique usage case, and you kind of have, a little bit more cost effectiveness there potentially. Just spitballing, I don't even know if that would, be remotely possible to have something that works in those very different scenarios. It's the same component, but something like that I think could maybe be the way they go about it, but I have no idea. And I haven't heard any speculation either. I see the boy says everything has to be big here as far as vehicles. Yeah, there's some of that too, for sure. Yeah, especially in certain states. And Underdog says, my neighbor had a friend drop by in a Maserati Gran Turismo. Glorious engine sound. I know. Such a good sound. And they are cheap too. Again, you have to have the bravery of dealing with Maserati reliability and parts costs. But you can get a Gran Turismo. I think they're under 20 grand now, or if they're not under, they're like low 20s for a car that still, in my opinion, looks fantastic, sounds fantastic, still makes a statement, I think, and is actually luxurious. You're sitting in Italian leather seats and all that kind of stuff. Again, not for everyone with the reliability, but it's tempting. Even myself, I'm thinking if I ever, wanted to do a cheaper 4-seater convertible, because for me it's got to be a 4-seater so I can drive my kid around. There's not a lot of options, because a lot of the stuff that I would naturally go for, like F-Type, it's just 2-seaters. So Grand Cabrio or Gran Turismo convertible, as they sometimes call that newer version. That's one of the top picks for me. I think it's that and like an Aston Martin DB9 convertible, like two of the best cheap sounds you can have with the top down. Just so good. And let me see here. Michelle says the Ghibli and Levante V6s sound so good. Always enjoy hearing them. Yeah, they do. Lightning says, when will Chris Fix do a face reveal? Yeah, I don't know. It's a good question. I thought he said something around like 10 million, but then he's over 10 million subscribers, I think, now, right? So I'm not sure when he'll ever do it. I think he enjoys the anonymity. I'm butchering that. Why can't I haven't even had that much scotch. But the anonymous component of that is very nice and appreciated, because he's a big deal. He's he's had a lot of people that would love to figure out who he is and all that kind of stuff. But I think that he wants to maintain that privacy, and I completely understand that. So I don't know if he ever will, and I don't blame him if he never does either. But he's a good dude, for sure, and very, very fortunate that I've gotten to spend a decent amount of time with him in the past. Let me see. Chad says, what show are you going to be an extra in? It doesn't have it has a working title. There's a couple working titles for it. I don't know the final title. So I'll just wait until I know the actual title, because I don't think they're going to use any of the working titles that have been used on the production. But it should be, I think we should be hearing stuff about it pretty soon, unless they're putting it on the back burner or they've just shelved it. But I haven't heard anything about it since production ended. And I know production ended for everyone, not just me, but like I know the show wrapped in December. So a few months for post-production, but like it's Apple TV, so it shouldn't take super long to turn around, because they're just churning out shows like nobody's business. So I mean, like, we got to hear about it soon, but I'll let you guys know once I do hear anything about that. I know there's a few of you that, you know, enjoy seeing me make little appearances and stuff from time to time. So I'm hoping to do more of that this year. I submitted for another show here. We'll see if they end up needing me or not. But I'm hoping to do more of that this year. I actually tried to apply to be on The Pit, because they filmed that here in Pittsburgh too. That's one of the bigger ones. Actually, fun fact, the hospital that The Pit is based at is actually the hospital I was born in. So I was born at The Pit. Yeah, so I actually applied last year to do a little bit of, not really stunt driving, but they needed drivers to like drive and like hit the brakes as someone was running across the street and stuff like that. And I applied to do that in the Fiat, and I don't think they wanted red cars. I don't know if red's just like stands out too much in a production. They kind of want more, you know, stuff that fades into the background, or what. But yeah, so I applied to do that, didn't get in for that, but that's kind of, yeah, one of the fun things that generates a lot of buzz around here. But also another movie, while we're on that topic. So if you guys saw, there's a new trailer out for Hershey, the Hershey movie they just did, which has the one girl from White Lotus in it and a couple other people. But my buddy was actually an extra in that, and he just sent me a screenshot the other day from the trailer. He was in the scene where they like reveal the Hershey bar for the first time to the factory workers, like the completed final product or whatever. And then he's like in the front row there of like the factory workers, like, wow, like a Hershey bar. And like, you know, he had to have all the period stuff on and everything. So that'll be fun. I'm hoping to go see that and maybe even go see it with him. We'll see. But yeah, so there's all those little things. I'm happy I've now got a little bit more time to try and submit for that stuff, because it pays pretty well. So it's one of these things nowadays that, like, because of how little YouTube pays me, it's better financially for me to go hang out on a movie set all day than to and just be an extra than it is to make an extra video. So I'm hoping to do more extra stuff this year. We'll see what other productions come here. But let me see. So Lightning says, if you have a pickup truck, throw some hammers back there. Not sure what that was in reference to earlier. Apologies. So I'm falling so far behind on the comments here tonight. Chad says, we have a new Tesla dealership in a strip mall that shares a lot with the Popeyes. Times are getting rough. That's pretty funny. Let me see. Bert Ross says, are Nissan dealers accepting orders for the Zs now? I believe they are. I think ordering is open, if I remember correctly. Yeah, definitely. If nothing else, if you're interested in one, get on the list at your dealer. So at least once that does open up, you know, you're able to place an order right away. That's what I did with the Bullet whenever I wanted to order that back in the day. Is, you know, I knew they weren't accepting orders yet, but I, you know, figured out my dealer of choice. I said, hey, look, you know, if you're doing these at MSRP, I want to be first in line. And you know, that as soon as that opened up, I got my order in, and I was, you know, nice and early there. And Patricia says, best YouTuber ever. I appreciate the kind words there, Patricia. Thanks for stopping by. And Chad says, it'd be cool if you could add a shade of color to show where you are with the comments. They pop on screen as they post, but I think it'd be cool to follow along. Yeah, it would be nice to kind of highlight that stuff. I really wish there was an easier encoder, because there's some of these encoders that, especially some of these live streams that have a producer off screen who's able to manage stuff, or two people where you have one person able to not talk and be able to like play around with stuff on the computer. You're able, like, I know you can highlight and have like the question you're answering on the actual screen and stuff. I'd love to integrate some of that stuff. It's just, again, me one man banding it over here, trying to do all that, just a little much with the current software. Hopefully it gets a little bit easier in the future. But those encoders are still just a little tricky for me personally. I'm not technologically challenged on too many things, but the encoder thing is a little bit tricky for me to set up still. So we'll see. Hopefully someday I can improve that, or YouTube makes it easier to do that stuff. Would be nice. And let me see. CB Mitchell's drinking along. I appreciate that. Appreciate that. And Chad says, did you see the video of the cops on a golf cart making it bounce to imitate the bouncing SUVs? No, I didn't see that. And cheers, Chad. And Kyle says, hey, Matt, I have a 24 tracks 2 RS lease. Computer glitches with the dumbed down system is the car's biggest fault. Oh, that sucks. Premature rust along the door panels by the plastic panels too, considering a 24 Blazer EV. So I mean, I guess maybe they've had some time. Hopefully they've improved. But I remember build quality on the Blazer, I don't think was great either. I have to try and remember what the fault was with the Blazer. I can't remember exactly. But yeah, I mean, it's surprising to hear that your tracks, especially it's not a first model year of that, I don't think. So I mean, that's a shame that it's not having. I mean, I remember the infotainment was a little slow in the early pre-production ones that I had, but I would hope that had been improved. That's a shame if it hasn't. I know it's because I then had one as a press car like a year or so later, and that also was a little bit slow, but it was never glitchy. It was just not fast. But it's a shame. That's stuff that they should easily be fixing with software updates, like over the air and stuff. That's crazy. There's still glitches. I'm sorry to hear that. And the rust, I mean, like our Lyric, I talked about this. The build quality in our Lyric wasn't great either. I mean, I love that thing. I mean, we've been driving it a bunch here recently since I haven't had press cars, and I love driving it. But yeah, it just doesn't give me a lot of confidence in the long-term durability of it if it's not built very well. So totally understand. I mean, if you want something with good build quality though, a GM, just some of their stuff's just not great. So I would probably recommend another brand. Honestly, some people have good luck. So I would say also, some of the stuff like with our Lyric, there was some stuff that I knew, when we picked it up, like it wasn't great, but like we wanted the color we wanted, and I just figured stuff would get fixed after the fact. But if you are shopping around, just maybe try and really take a fine-tooth comb to everything, and make sure that everything looks really, really good. But I mean, a lot of companies struggle with this. And actually, there's another car which I don't like talking about build quality all the time, because build quality can vary, and I don't want to dog a car for build quality and then have a bunch of people be like, "It's fine. What are you talking about?" But you'll see the review that I'll be posting here in a day or two. I won't give it away just yet, but build quality was some of the worst that I've seen in a while. And it's so obvious that you'll be able to see it on camera. Again, I didn't say it because I've seen others that have really good build quality with this car, but this one was just a Friday car to the max. I mean, it was kind of humorous just how thrown together it was, it seemed. So yeah, I mean, I think especially the American brands struggle with this a lot still. And this is a lot of why there's still some people that just completely have sworn off the domestic brands. And I honestly don't blame them, because stuff that should never get through quality checks is shipped to dealers. And it's not just them. I mean, also Mercedes has had a bunch of quality issues, same kind of stuff. It's just like, I don't know what it is, if it's just the quality check stuff's not as good, or if it's just the workers aren't as good, or what. I don't know what's going on, but like it's a lot of bad build stuff I've been seeing recently. So yeah, best of luck. I hope that, I know it's a lease, so you don't really care, but any of that stuff, the premature rust, all that stuff, like GM should be taking care of that for you under warranty for free. And if they're not, then that's definitely make us stink about that, because that's absolutely stuff that they need to fix on their end, and that's one of the things that's holding them back from greatness for sure. But Blazer EV is fine. I don't love not having CarPlay in those. That's my biggest gripe. And also just the terrible utilization of space. I mean, it has it's huge. It's a mid-size SUV pretty much. But yet it has less cargo space than a lot of compact SUVs. And it's just you have like more cargo space in a CRV than you have in this big Blazer. Thankfully, the Lyric is actually a little bit better, I'd say, with the packaging. And we also didn't need max space, so it's fine for us. But like, I mean, they drive great. That's one of the best things. Is like the Blazer drive fantastic, but the materials in the Blazer though are just also, even if you get a well built one, just a little cheap, a little too much hard plastic. And the leases, especially if you're looking at leases, it depends on how much space you need, but if you're dealing with a Trax just fine. If you want something, a little bit better, I think Equinox EV is actually the better buy between that and Blazer, both from a price standpoint and from just, I think they learned a few early lessons with Blazer, and I think Equinox is a better vehicle as a result of that. And if you want to go even, you can get like an optic, like a Cadillac optic lease is even pretty cheap still these days. So I would go for something like that before Blazer personally, but a lot of people enjoy the Blazer too. If you want CarPlay, there's always the Honda Prologue still you can get. But anyway, so Chaz is wondering if you or the chat has a favorite feel-good car moment. Mine is when I saw a buggy pusher admire a resto mod. The owner came up and let him sit and took pics for him. That's awesome. Feel-good car moments. I mean, it's been a lot over the years. I mean, especially when I was hanging out with all the exotic car owners that I used to hang out with a lot more. A lot of cool, letting kids sit in the cars, and they did Make-A-Wish stuff and all those kinds of things, which especially when you have a car like that is very, an honor to be able to do those kinds of things. So there's some of that stuff. I'm trying to think for me personally, because I never really had a car that's, anyone's really desperately wanting to, check out or anything like that. But I'm trying to think of others. Yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of like little, small things, but there's no like grand thing that stands out in my head personally that I was able to do with, my own vehicles or anything like that. I mean, I think, one of the fun things for me was, I've been able, with all the press cars, I've had some fun opportunities to, take friends and family members who've never had a chance to drive, or they don't get to drive the press cars, but ride and stuff. Like when I had the Aston Martin last year, like getting to give my dad a ride in an Aston Martin after watching Aston Martins on screen and all the James Bond movies that we enjoyed together, stuff like that. There's those kinds of things that are pretty cool. And even just, getting to, do the joy rides with some of my buddies and like, wow, this is like the fastest thing I've ever been in or whatever, like those kinds of things are very fun and rewarding. Obviously there's personal stuff that, like my daughter getting to sit in an Aston Martin, like to me, that's very special to me as a huge fan of the brand and stuff. Just a lot of really fun pictures that, when she grows up, it's like, wow, like, there's us pointing at the engine bay of a Corvette Z06 press car that I had. And, just kind of some cool stuff if she cares about cars someday that, I'll be like, yeah, like you were able to go full throttle at an Audi RS6 Avant when you were, 3 or whatever, like those kinds of things, are going to be fun from a personal standpoint. But as far as doing stuff for others, I think just, the allowing friends and family to have those fun experiences is really cool. I think one of the ones a long time ago, actually, when I worked at the Porsche dealer in high school and in college as a detailer, I convinced one of the salesmen who I was buddies with. My dad had always wanted to drive a Porsche 911. It was always like kind of one of his dream cars. He'd never had a chance to drive a 911. And I was able to set up on his birthday to have him come out and test drive. It was a 997 Carrera S, back then was the new one, which is how long ago this was. But he was able to drive the 911 for the first time ever. And I felt really good to be able to, I was the reason why he was able to drive a 911 for the first time. And that was kind of a special thing. So that's probably one of the top ones. Again, personal, not something I'm doing for, other people I don't know, but that's kind of, one of the bigger highlights, I think, for sure. But yeah, I'm curious if you guys have some cool stories. me see. So, and Lancelot says, my favorite car moment was when I got to sit in a kit replica at a car show in the 80s. That's cool. That's awesome. I guess that's kind of along those lines. One fun thing I didn't really, I mean, I don't know how much it actually affected other people, but like when I did my Back to the Future DeLorean review back in 2015, I mean, obviously a very high watermark for me as well personally, but like driving that around and the thrill that everyone around me got seeing that driving past them, yeah, that was really cool. And that's with a lot of the cool cars I drive, that kind of component, even like the Aston Martin last year. I remember one of the days I was just going to go filming or do something, and I got stuck behind a school bus. And like all the kids in the back of the bus freaking out. And then like the one kid like was dropped off and like actually saw his jaw drop when I drove by, like, that kind of stuff. Because I was that kid, and it makes an impression, especially if you actually are into cars. You see something like that, like that's the kind of stuff that people 30 years later say, like, I always wanted an Aston Martin because I saw that one drive by me one day or whatever. And like being the one behind the wheel that maybe is making some of those dream car, goals happen for people, down the road and things like that. Like that's really cool. Again, not my car, not my achievement, that it's not like it's, me. It's just I'm the dumb idiot that's lucky enough to get one of these for a week that, I've convinced the car company to let me have. But like, I'm still playing a part in perpetuating that passion for kids and for adults alike, and I think that's kind of one of the feel good things for sure. And I think the videos also do that a little bit as well, but in person, I think it's a whole different story. Also, Chad, thank you so much for a super chat. He says, you're an amazing dad, and that means a lot. I appreciate that, Chad. Yeah, it's it's one of these things, doing things for your kids is one of the most rewarding things. And creating that legacy and those memories for the future and stuff is very, it's a very special thing for sure. And thank you so much, Chad, for the super chat. And I see we actually are over time here, so we're pretty close to the end. So I don't think I'm doing too bad here. I appreciate everyone who maybe slow down on comments, help me out here a little bit too. But let me see. Chad says, with your history, I was concerned about you driving the Miata around with the tree. That's true. Yes, I am very careful, and that's honestly one of the things that is kind of a little bit safer about convertibles is the fact that you can see upward limitlessly. So with the Mustang, like, I had limited visibility upward, and so you don't see things coming out of the woods at you as well as you can when you're in a convertible. But yeah, the flip side obviously is that if you don't respond fast enough and you're not aware, then yes, I wouldn't have had that roof to save me, in the Miata like I did in the Mustang. So absolutely, for sure. I just drove past that tree today. It's still laying there in the woods, and every time I'm always staring upwards, and it's a little freaky for sure. Because the insurance adjuster, he said like that tree came, if you were 5 seconds faster or slower, that would have been it. So it's definitely crazy. I'm very lucky, and I don't take it for granted, that's for sure. But Lancelot says that car show also had a General Lee and a replica of the Batmobile from the Adam West show. The Batmobile was made by a local guy. I got a chance to speak with the builder years later. That's awesome. And man, someone who has the skills to build replicas of all that stuff is awesome. That's so gotta be so fun. That's cool. You got to experience those. Let me see. Vishal says he grew up with a minivan, '05 Chrysler Town and Country. Will definitely be a minivan buyer in the future when the time comes. Nice. Practicality and utility of them is great, and it's something you can keep for years. Very true. And Chad says, Matt, I want to thank you again for building this community. I know because of time you skip over some of the chat talk, but you brought a lot of randos together that are cool. I'm so happy about that, and glad that you guys are able to do that chatting. Like I said, the Discord is there for those of you who are able to access that. If you want, definitely let me know if you want to chat more as well. And I'm so glad that you guys are able to have that great community too. I love that, and that's one of the huge perks of doing YouTube is the great community we've built. It's so fun, and I think these live streams especially, you don't get that on a lot of other car channels or channels in general. A lot of them, it's just them just monologuing, not interacting very much. And I really love, how these are very manageable. I'm able to keep up with comments relatively speaking. And that's one of the perks. Sure, I'd love the growth. I'd love, for the channel's sake to have things get bigger, but the bigger things get, the harder it is to keep up with comments and have those better connections with you guys. And so, it's a blessing and a curse, but I think that the blessing part of it is definitely, this community we've built, and that, is a lot more tight knit than a lot of others where you're just randomly commenting with other randos you've never seen or seen their comments before, versus you guys all recognize each other at this point, and I think it's really special, and I appreciate all the hearts there as well. And so, but thank you guys for making this community so great. It's obviously completely fueled by you guys. I'm just one person. One person doesn't make a community. So I'm so glad that you guys have been, wanting to join and be part of this community. It really means a lot. Lancelot also agrees. The community is awesome. I always feel at home here. Great people to have awesome conversations with. And thanks so much for joining in with all those as well, Lancelot. And all the great comments and questions. You guys are really great with all that stuff. It's so fun that these are always, it's amazing. We've done, ever since I started doing the counting of these, and I didn't just do them monthly like I used to way back in the day, but we're up to almost 200 of these. And, you'd think we'd run out of stuff to talk about. We'd run out of topics. Obviously, there's always new stuff happening, but the fact that we've done this in this current format almost 200 times, and we're still having a good time here twice a week now, is really impressive. And I commend you guys for that. It's so great. So you guys all deserve a pat on the back and a cheers to all of you for being awesome and for your continued support. It's always mind blowing. And so thank you all. Cheers to all of you. All right, so last few here. Lancelot says, Matt, you should try to review an S650 Roush Mustang. They basically fixed the annoying stuck-on tablet thing on the dash. Interesting. Okay, so I feel like I remember seeing this, but it's been a while now. I'll have to go back and see. I think there are some Roush things that come in. I'm kind of curious how that would do. So the Mustang would be a good trial run, because I also see there's a bunch. The one Ford dealer I work with, they have a bunch of these other things. Like there's like an RTR Bronco that they have. They have like a Black Widow F-150, which I think is a Roush thing, which I don't know, because since it's, kind of a modded thing, I don't know how much search volume there is, how many people actually are seeking out reviews of that kind of stuff. Obviously it's fun to see me, have a giggle, in some fast thing, but I'm just, I don't know if those would be super high view counts, but in the past, Roush stuff has done fairly well for me. So I wouldn't be opposed. Again, I think the key though is I don't want to be beating up on new Mustangs, because I know as a new Mustang buyer 3 times, I just would hate to be that guy that's ruining it for the actual buyers of those things. So but if there's like a demo one, or there's something that's already got some miles on it, absolutely, I'm totally in. And there may be a potential for something like that in the near future. I don't know how fast it's going to sell and how willing they will be to let me drive it, because it's a pretty wild vehicle. But I'm hoping to maybe film something that's kind of nostalgic. We'll see what happens, but it could be kind of a fun return to form for me in a way. So we'll see if that can work out or not. But I'm always, bottom line is, even if that doesn't happen, I'm always kind of looking for those kinds of things, including some of the Roush stuff would be fun. Chad says, you reminded me of Dory with the Sea Anemone, as far as not being able to say the anonymous stuff, or anonymity. I still can't say it. Someone take me back to first grade so I can figure out how to say that word. I know which word I'm trying to say, just I don't say it very often. Anyway, as a result of my poor schooling. But let me see here. So where were we here? Last few comments. Sorry, I just reloaded, so I lost my spot here. But Chad says, have you ever had a random use safety equipment work overtime. My tire inflator has been working overtime at my job. I'm the go-to for a low tire, and I'm not mad about it. Oh, interesting. So yeah, as far as safety equipment, not safety equipment stuff, I don't think. I mean, the one thing that I'm consistently impressed, I'm going to knock on wood because I don't want to jinx myself on this, but we're still using the Ford mobile charger to charge all of our EVs. And that mobile charger, it's in the name. It's supposed to be like the one that you take around with you if you need to like have a backup charge. It was never really meant to be a home charging station. Ford sold actual, like level 2 things. This is just a level 1 kind of thing, but it's yeah, we didn't have to give it back with the Mach-E. You can keep that stuff whenever you have that. So we kept it and it's still there. And that charger is still, I mean, 4 years later now, still chugging along, still doing great and charging a lot. I mean, it keeps the Lyric topped off, it keeps the Fiat topped off, it keeps the some of these press cars. I got to do like a full charge on some of these things because half the times they deliver them to me with like hardly any charge left because they sometimes don't want to stop after doing a whole road trip up to deliver a car to me to then sit at a charger for half an hour before I come to my house. So yeah, they some of these things I have to really pushing that charger a lot, and it's been keeping up. So say what you will about Ford. I mean, I think the Mach-E also treated us very well, all things considered, but that charger is still doing really well. But I'm stashing chargers because I'm like waiting for it to fail. Like we got one with the Lyric, so like I got a Cadillac one, I got one with the Fiat, so I got 2 chargers sitting in the wings waiting to get tapped in for the next usage if the Ford one goes. But that Ford one is still going. I'm very curious how long it's going to last. But I mean, it's low voltage, it's just level 1 that's doing the whole time. So it's not like it's a big ask from an electrical device. But it's doing really well, though. So that's the only thing I have that's remotely similar to that kind of thing. But I'm glad that your tire inflator has been a big help for everyone around you. It's awesome. And kudos to you for doing that too. And gotcha. Lightning says throw some hammers back. There was a meme from Fastlane Daily about trucks. Gotcha, man. Yeah, see, I never watched Fastlane Daily. I saw clips, but I never had the time to like sit there and watch it every day. Yeah, those were fun videos. And Lancelot says we should all go and watch Abduction after the stream to catch Matt's cameo. Yep, yeah, that's the first one. Lots of good cameos. For anyone who hasn't seen that, if you're curious, not the movie, but if you're curious about my cameo stuff, I did a video way back covering all the ones I had done up until the one that I did last year. It's just like fun fact, I was an extra in movies or something like that. You can go see if you want to hear all the movies I was in. It's how I met my wife. It's how I met a bunch of friends back in the day, and I met a lot of great people. Met some cool celebrities as well and stuff like that. But yeah, it's been a fun thing. Absolutely, highly encourage if you ever have movies or TV shows come into your town. Highly recommend being an extra. It's a really fun experience, even just to try it once and then to always just kind of be immortalized that I was in something on the movie screen or on the TV. It's fun, at least in my opinion. It gives me a big rush. And I will say, if anyone's trying to get close to what it feels like to go full throttle in a crazy car, the only thing that ever I think actually in some cases is actually more exciting is being under or being in front of a movie camera with celebrities, with a brilliant director and like having the lights on you. And I mean, like it's a rush. It's a real big adrenaline hit. So definitely recommend if you ever can do that. Anyway, Luke says, I just parked for the night. I saw a Hyundai Elantra N with a Type R badge in Kentucky. Weird sight for sure. That is a very weird sight. I guess they're just having a little bit of fun there with that. That's funny. Well, hope you have a good evening there, Luke. And hope you get some well-deserved rest after however many hours you've been on the road there. And Chad says, have you ever looked at where some of your viewers are from? Jordan and myself are from the Florida Panhandle. I'm sure you got some reach. Yeah, so it does tell me states, but it doesn't tell me anything beyond state. So it's not super precise, but yeah, I mean, seeing, obviously all 50 states. The fun thing is seeing the countries. I mean, I think there's like 150 or so odd countries that people have seen these videos. And that's the fun thing is like, being like, man, like there's people in these really cool places that are watching me somehow. Some of these places, it's like, I don't even know why they even care about these cars. These are cars they don't have in their countries or whatever. But like, I guess it's just a fun kind of seeing what else is out there kind of thing. But that's the cool thing is it's truly global. And especially now with the live translations that, Google can do. And even though they're not the best with, the transcriptions and stuff, like, the fact that they've made it, accessible to people of every language is just really wild stuff and really cool that these really do have a global impact. I mean, it's not a lot of viewers globally, a lion's share of my stuff comes from, English speaking countries, but it's really cool that there's others too that can enjoy it. And every once in a while I get a message or something like that, that's cool. And I mean, even in my international travels, not a lot, but there's been a couple of people that have even come up, that have recognized me. It's like, holy crap, I'm in Italy, and someone comes up and says hi, or whatever. I mean, that's always crazy, especially in the airports and stuff. Because sometimes if you're at an international airport, you got people coming from all over the world, and getting to say hi to someone as they're on their way to the next country or whatever is kind of fun. Let me see. I see Lance also. It's fun you guys are sharing your locations there. He's in South Central Montana, and about 2 hours from Yellowstone, which is really cool. You have that right there, pretty close drive. Something that some people is like a lifetime achievement to make it to Yellowstone, and it's like essentially your backyard, relatively speaking. That's really cool. Chad, thank you so much for another super chat here. He says, I was in a news segment swimming out of my car. Went to Waffle House, called my mom. She already saw on the news. Waffle House gave me free food and coffee. That's awesome. So yeah, you had your little moment of fame there. That was probably really exciting, and that's a fun story. So swimming out of your car. There's a lot of context there. I have a lot of questions. We don't have to get into it if you don't want, but I don't know if it was a flood situation or something that's more fun. But hopefully all was good with that. And crazy. Let me see here. Chad says, does commenting on your vids help? Still looking for Easter eggs. Yeah. So there wasn't a little bit of an Easter egg in the Miata video. I didn't like advertise it as such in the comments, but there was the funny little thing that happened there in the Miata video. If you watch that all the way through, it's kind of like a fun little outtake I just kind of included. When a goose ran across the road. But also Chad says Atlanta and Tucson were the scariest driving experiences ever. Yeah, it's been a long time since I've actually driven in Atlanta. Tucson was pretty nice for me, but it's been a while since I've been there too. Maybe it's changed. Vishal says, since you have a gap in press cars now, has your daughter asked why there's no new cars at home? Yes, she's been wondering when I'm going to get more soon. She enjoys checking them out, but yeah, no, she's now she's actually 5, so she's pretty aware of what's going on. And I told her, yeah, I'm not gonna have any press cars for a little while, and but she's excited to try out some new ones here soon. So hoping to have it'll be at least maybe not this next week, but hopefully the following week I'm gonna be starting to get some press cars again. But it's been fun to be on my own and just drive the Fiat like a daily driver here. Let me see. All right, so yeah, I see. We've looks like everyone's saying farewell here. And I see Theodore says, "Thanks, Matt. You're the best." I appreciate that. Thanks so much for your support, Theodore, and for going back. He's been going back and watching some of the old videos, and it's always fun to see the new comments there on the old stuff sometimes. So thanks so much, Theodore, for that too. And Lucas says, "What do you think of the 26 Jeep Compass 4x4?" I haven't driven a Compass, honestly, but they actually sell in pretty good numbers. That's been one of the cars kind of on my list of stuff to do at the dealer, because no one reviews Compasses really. I mean, there's a few of the like dealer-based reviewers that like, they do walkarounds and maybe a little quick test drive, but it's not really, as in-depth of a review in my opinion. So I think there's a need for a good in-depth Compass review, because they do sell a ton of them still. And there's none in the press fleet. Jeep has no interest in promoting it, despite the fact that it's still pretty popular and is all paid off. So it's just pure profit for them at this point. So it's kind of odd, but I guess there's nothing new to show off, so they just don't bother. I don't know. But anyway, yes, I'm planning to do one, but I don't know. My knee-jerk reaction to Compass is it's a little pricey at MSRP. You're probably gonna get a huge discount on one if you get one, but like, it's not priced super well, and it's old. So it's not going to be as competitive. Now, if the old thing is a perk to you, by all means, could be better than some of the others, but it's a very competitive segment, for that subcompact kind of segment, that, like we were talking about in the beginning of the stream here, if you caught the beginning here, there's Taos that's so good. There's, Kicks that's so good. There's, Cruella Cross, there's the HRV, there's a lot of good stuff in that segment that I would take over Compass, again, especially at the prices that Compass is advertised at least. So that's my holdup with it. Now, if you can get a giant, massive discount on one, go for it. Although I would argue if you're going to go for a Stellantis gas-powered subcompact, I'd rather have a Hornet. As much as everyone loves to hate on the Hornet, it's the most horsepower in its segment. It's actually quite sporty. It's an Alfa Romeo interior. It's pretty nice. If I'm going to be spending money at a Chrysler, Jeep, Dodge, Ram, dealer, I'm going to get one of the leftover Hornets because there's huge discounts on those, and might not be super reliable, but I don't know. Compass is probably a little bit better, but probably not a huge difference. So probably the way I would spend my money if you're going to stay at that dealer. But otherwise, yeah, there's a lot of other stuff I'd probably recommend over it, honestly. But I haven't driven one, so I mean, I could be wrong. Maybe the deals are fantastic and it actually is a really solid little thing. They sell in good numbers, so it can't be terrible. But I need to do more research on it, honestly. Lancelot says he's lost how many times he's been to Yellowstone. That's crazy. That's truly something that only a local would be able to say, I think. So that's awesome. Good question, Vishal. If Lancelot pulled a Michael Scott. And Chad says, man, there's a flash flood in Pensacola. That's crazy. Well, sorry that your car got flooded there. And I'm glad you're all right, though. And at least you got a nice Waffle House free meal as a result of that, if nothing else. But that's crazy. Theodore says, is there a prototype where the Infiniti had the GTR motor? Yes. It's called the Q50. The Q50 Rouge, which was, it was in, 2018? Maybe they did that concept. And it was, GTR motor in a Q50. It would have been so awesome. And it was really close to that peak Infiniti period. And then they didn't do that. And then it kind of just languished from there, sadly. But like Infiniti was really doing cool performance stuff, up until that point. And it's such a shame. Chad says we have a big bay hugging downtown. Gotcha. So that's I guess why maybe have more floods than the average coastal person. That's crazy. And Theodore, thank you so much for a super chat here to end out the night. And Chad says we love you, Matt, and thanks for giving us a place to express how we feel about cars. Absolutely. And glad that you guys can all enjoy this common bond that we have. It's a really fun thing. It's one of the things I love about the car culture the most, is the uniting aspect of it. And I love that the community we've built here isn't, the chest, puffing, fist pounding, kind of, it's, we're all, level-headed. We're not trying to prove something to somebody else. We're just enjoying cars, enjoying chatting about cars, no egos. I love that. So anyway, thanks to you guys again for building this awesome community. And Decepticon, thanks for stopping by here at the end. He said his spot was a full exposed carbon Ford Mustang GTD. What a mean machine. That's awesome. Yeah, they actually, I didn't realize, but there was a Cars and Coffee here in Pittsburgh yesterday. I didn't go to it, but a few of my buddies did and took some pictures, and there was a Mustang GTD there, and I didn't know if someone in Pittsburgh already had one, but that's very exciting. I know of one other GTD that is going to be coming into Pittsburgh. And I don't know if I'll be able to see it or not, but they're starting to show up little by little, so that's exciting. I'm glad you got to see one. That's got to be an incredible spot. So kudos to you for spotting that. And Chad says I wouldn't mind having a Hornet. Just saying, yeah. I mean, again, they had some electrical issues. Hopefully that was sorted. I don't know. But, a Hornet with a warranty that'll, as long as you keep within a warranty period, I think that's a pretty solid buy still. And Michelle says also regarding the Toyota employee thing, they got a stipend, or they get a stipend up to, I think, $1,100 towards cars. My aunt got the Grand Highlander and Corolla Cross using this perk. Gotcha. That's a nice stipend. I don't know if that's per month or what, but if it's $1,100 a month, you get towards a lease on that's nice because you can see. We'll finish off the night with a cheers to the GR Corolla. Man, I could totally lease a GR Corolla for well under that and still have money for a GR86 maybe even. I'm really just kind of going off the deep end with my dreams now, but that's a nice stipend. That's a nice perk for working for Toyota. Man, that's one of the companies I actually, if I did ever go to the manufacturer side, I'd love to work for Toyota. Just that everything's in Texas and all my family's here in Pittsburgh and all the friends. It just would be so hard we have a great neighborhood community and everything too. It just would be really hard to leave Pittsburgh. But if I could work like remote for Toyota, that would be one of the companies I would probably jump at real quick if they actually offered me something. Cheers to GR Corolla though. Anyway, Luke says, Matt, we love you, but we might push you around at times because you're on the skinny side of things. happy to be the butt of the jokes too. I can always take it in stride. Vishal says that's $1,100 a month. Wow, that is a generous stipend, man. And I'm sure you're not getting a sticker either. They're probably getting discounts on top of that too. So that's pretty nice. Very nice perk, at least at the level that she's at. That's awesome. And I see Chad says we all know times are rough, but we love you, Matt. And I appreciate your support and especially all the generosity with the super chats and all the member gifting and everything. That all again makes a huge difference. It very much helps. The memberships have been a really nice thing to kind of give the earnings a little bit of stability here, even whenever YouTube decides to be dumb. So anyway, thank you all so much, though. And wow, 2.5. I keep going a half an hour over, and I'm not even realizing it, which I guess hopefully you guys are having as fun of a time as I am here. But thank you all so much for hanging out here. Have a great week, and see you guys on Wednesday for the next live. So take care till then, and stay tuned for another good, hopefully at least one review, maybe some rants too. We'll see what happens. But thanks so much again for your support and for being awesome. Take care, guys.